So the first time I played this game, I was probably like 10 or 11. I don't remember. So I picked a name that I thought was very clever, even though it doesn't really matter. You're going to be the only person who sees it because this is before online gaming was a thing on consoles. Right. And I think I just named him Tits.
Hey, Tits. How you doing, Tits?
I've been using that name for Cloud ever since.
Oh, so every playthrough you call him Tits.
Yeah, sometimes with a Z. I spiced up a bit.
It's time, once again, for Tits.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the worst of all possible worlds, where it's time once again for gaming. I'm the worst of all possible Brian's.
I'm the worst of all possible AJ's.
And I'm the worst of all possible Josh's. And every week on this show, we of course do case studies in the pop culture of a dying empire. We talk about a piece of pop culture, we pick it apart, look at its narratives, as both the ones that you might have seen as well as the ones that you may have missed. And this week, we are doing a piece of media that I know a great many of you have long wanted to hear us do. We, of course, are talking about Squaresoft's epic, seminal RPG, Final Fantasy VII. And to talk about it, we have brought along a guest that many of you know and love. He is the longtime host of Lions Led by Donkeys, a podcast about great failures in military history, which we actually just appeared on this week. And he's also our favorite Armenian. Hopefully by the end of this episode, he is your favorite Armenian as well. Welcome, Joe Kassabian.
Thanks for having me. I have to ask, am I the only Armenian you know? Because I'm also open to winning by default.
I will have to say, Joe, you're not my favorite Armenian, and it's nothing personal. It's just that I'm a huge fan of Alvin and the Chipmunks and their creator, Dave Seville, who was actually Armenian.
I did not know that.
Yeah, his real name was not Seville.
Yeah, he had to change his first name. It was originally Jimmy.
Joe, when I reached out to you, it was actually a little while back now, and we got to talking about you coming on the show. I seem to recall that we landed on Final Fantasy VII pretty quickly because you were just so passionate about talking about this. So I'd love, before we dig into the game itself, just tell us a little bit about your history with Final Fantasy VII and why you love this game so much.
One of the reasons why it ended up becoming so important to me is now, on top of being a podcaster, I'm an author. So I've kind of got into, the understanding and crafting of narrative. Mm-hmm. And the first ever example of that for me that stuck was certainly Final Fantasy VII. It hit me at the right age. I didn't even have a PlayStation 1 at the time. I had to steal it from my stepsister. I didn't have the game either. It was a friend at school. I still vividly, I still remember this so much. It hit me so much. I still remember I got it from a guy named Justin, who was a juggalo who went to Detroit Central High School.
Yes.
If you notice that he was in high school and I was not, because he was also the guy who sold weed to the middle school students, which I was in.
That is such classic juggalo behavior, and I love it. I feel like I've told the story on this show before about the time that I went to Movement, the electronic music festival in downtown Detroit at Hart Plaza.
Yeah.
There was a juggalo there who was just standing by the gate, taking $10 from anybody who wanted to come by and kick him in the nuts. And later that very day, he and all his friends had made it into the festival by that guy making enough money from getting kicked in the nuts.
Dudes rock, honestly.
I feel like that's one of the main messages of Final Fantasy VII as well, is dudes rock. And also being kicked in the balls emotionally over and over and over again.
I think that's one of the things that it really stuck with me was, on top of having, in my opinion, the best Final Fantasy villain of any of them, it was so complicated to me. As someone who played video games in comparison to anything else I'd played, I think it took me months or years to beat the first time.
Yeah.
And that the whole experience of going through it, being given was, really the first, you could say, adults or not child video game narrative where people die, things get blown up, like the world explodes, shit like that. It stuck with me, and I followed it into reading and writing science fiction, and still to this day, playing every Final Fantasy that comes out, despite the fact I just continuously get more and more disappointed in them.
Well, and you were telling me you go back and play 7 every year, right?
At least once a year. I try to play 7 and 8 every year. I play 7 and 8 every year. 9, not too much to me. Didn't hit. 6, it's fine. I know a lot of people probably mad at me about that.
Ooh,
It's
yeah.
Shots fired.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
Look, I just don't I don't get the Kefka hype. I don't get it.
He's just a little guy. He's a little
He's just a
gremlin
fucking
man.
clown.
Yeah.
He's just a clown, and like I'm supposed to be scared of this. Maybe it's because the first time I played it, it wasn't when it came out. So when I played it, I mean, it doesn't look great. It's very blocky. I mean, of course, we're talking about Final Fantasy VII, so it's kind of funny in retrospect. But I played Final Fantasy VII when it was brand new. When those cutscenes hit, you're like, damn.
Whoa.
Like
they're flipping.
Those are real people. That must
Yeah.
be real life that they're doing there.
They're just like me. They have hooves for hands.
Well, in some cases, the fact that they even do polygonal rendering on top of FMVs, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it
it's really
feels
clever.
immersive in a way that most games from that era don't.
And the backgrounds of all of them in the original PS1, they still look great. If I remember correctly, and I've listened to you guys' show enough to know we're probably going to go into it. There was supposed to be Final Fantasies for N64.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
right?
and we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
God, those have been terrible. How many fucking cartridges would that take?
That's the thing. I was even looking up, like I had to like look up today, like how many RPGs were even made for the Nintendo 64. Obviously, if you consider Legend of Zelda an RPG, that's there. But like that's an action game. You have Quest 64.
Yeah, AJ's favorite.
There's Ogre Battle 64, which is sort of an RPG as RTS, but Ogre Battle 64
Ogre Battle rules.
is amazing, and it's also kind of still two-dimensional sprite kind of stuff. And this is really important because Final Fantasy, and in Japanese RPGs in general, performed strongest on Nintendo systems. There were, RPGs made for Sega and whatever else, but the two big ones were Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, arguably still.
Persona is certainly fighting them off.
That's
in my
true.
Yeah,
opinion,
it's
at this rate, but-
it's getting up there. I think Persona 5 has now outsold Rebirth.
Okay.
Even like the cachet of having like the people that made Persona on a title now is super important when you look at the game Metaphor that just came out.
Yeah.
I think to the point of cachet as well, like this would probably be a good time to talk a little bit about the actual people who made Final Fantasy VII happen, because this was in many ways another dream team. I mean, we talked a little bit about like Chrono Trigger and how they put a dream team together for that game, but they kind of did for this one too, right?
The creator of Final Fantasy and sort of the head honcho of Final Fantasy VII is Hironobu Sakaguchi. He was referred to as King around the office because that was his email, and he was like, "Oh, it was in reference to Champagne King," and it was like, "No, it fucking
No,
wasn't.
it wasn't.
Yeah,
No, it fucking wasn't."
We're going to be referencing a lot this oral history that is written by Matt Leone. He also he put this out in Polygon as an article, but there's a longer version as a book. I haven't read the book, but I have read the article, and it's a great source on what is usually a pretty opaque process in making video games and the kind of corporate deals that go into it.
Right.
And one thing that becomes really clear is that Sakaguchi just likes to say shit. So like everyone's like, oh yeah, we called him King because he was kind of like the king of everything. He's like, no, it's just because I drank all the time, and nobody else corroborates that information. Every time you'll have like three people be like, oh yeah, and then we were working on a Super Nintendo prototype for the 7th Final Fantasy, and he's like, I don't remember that. That didn't happen. We never did that. And then people are like, here's pictures from it.
I feel like the drinking might have something to do with him not remembering everything.
I mean,
that's certainly fair.
And that's I think part of the whole like the back and forth about the title of Final Fantasy in general, where originally it was said that Square was going to go under, so this was going to be their last game, so they called it that. People also referenced the fact that it was originally Fighting Fantasy, and there was a trademark on that. Probably some part of all of that is true, but if you ask Hironobu Sakaguchi, it just depends on the year what the story is.
Yeah, we have two separate articles of him saying two completely different things. So, the man is a self-mythologizer, right?
Yeah.
Like and we'll get a little bit more into his management style and how it sort of affected this game a little bit later. But also working on Final Fantasy VII was a young character and battle visualing director wunderkind named Tetsuya Nomura, who would go on to direct a little series called Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, he's also the one in charge of the remakes, right?
Yes, he is.
He's a man who cannot write a storyline that makes sense to anyone but himself.
We also have Yoshinori Kitase, who was the game director behind the Final Fantasies 6, 7, 8, 10, and Chrono Trigger.
Finals Fantasy.
And also Nobuo Uematsu, who is the co-composer on Chrono Trigger and most of the other Final Fantasy games.
I literally bought a game that I have no interest in recently just because it's probably the last game he's going to do the soundtrack for.
What's that game?
Fantasian. It was released as Neo Fantasian for Switch very recently.
But all of these people gathered together, they are all like so incredibly talented at so many different things. Like pretty much polymaths to a one.
It's interesting when you say the polymath thing, because they're all people who have done so many different jobs in their career, except for Uematsu, who's mostly just music. But the corporate structure, the fact that people stay working in video games in Japan leads to really interesting outcomes.
I also think that, like, in general, when it comes to games that are really memorable or different or break the mold, they generally come out of studios where people do a lot of different things. I mean, I will never shut the fuck up about Looking Glass. Part of the reason that Thief, Thief 2, and System Shock 2 are such fantastic and memorable games is that the people working on them knew everything from music to writing to voice acting to level design.
Square was like on top in Japan for like a very long time.
They were in a solid second. So no one could beat Dragon Quest in Japan.
Right, that was Enix.
Dragon Quest, when it gets released, it's always like a cultural event in Japan. Whereas in America, everyone's like, Final Fantasy. With Square, they were like, we're not even going to release all the Final Fantasies in the US. We're just going to put out every other one. So it was like Final Fantasy 2 in the US for many years was actually Final Fantasy 4. And Final Fantasy 3 in the US was actually Final Fantasy 6. Because the sales were the same. It did really, really well in Japan, and sometimes enough to justify the cost of localization in America, but not always.
And localization back then sucked.
They can't pay the $30 to the guy in the basement in Boston to single-handedly translate an entire game in a month.
I love the idea that, like, if these games had voiceovers and it was done the same way, everybody involved would have a Boston accent, like Midgards and Southie.
That's good.
Video games on the whole, which are still very separate from computer games at this time, they're becoming 3D. They're changing to a whole different dimension, and that's making them rethink in really big conceptual ways what's going to happen. Entire franchise die. This is like the switch to talking pictures.
Right.
And we have this new console generation coming out. Nintendo is sticking with cartridges. They love their cartridges.
Yes.
They love their absolute control over their corner of the market.
It's much harder to pirate a cartridge than it is to pirate a disc.
Yeah. And I think the point is very well made, Brian, that, at this point, consoles, PC, two different worlds. Because RPGs on the PC were actually very successful, but it was pretty much all Western developers. Obviously, you had the Elder Scrolls, you had Ultima.
And generally, that's for an older audience. That's for teenagers and adults playing RPGs, whereas Dragon Quest is a children's game.
Still is.
Like, JRPGs at this point are still leaning towards a younger audience on Nintendo consoles, which are sold in the toy aisle.
Right.
And so the American development of RPGs has been kind of in a different sector.
But the PlayStation is a console that is being pitched as the console that's not just for kids anymore.
Yeah, I remember those ads. They specifically had, like, adults playing it.
Yeah.
And it was always very interesting because I never had a gaming PC until arguably quite recently, and I always saw PC RPGs as much more obtuse, much more difficult, harder to figure out and understand.
Yeah, that's why they're good.
Kind of like PC gaming in general was back then. Like Steam arguably made everything kind of stupid proof in a lot of ways, which is why I can use it now.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it used to be like, you'd buy a game and then you'd bring it home and it's like, no, my computer can't fucking run this. Cool, great. I just wasted my time.
Exactly. And meanwhile, like you can play Final Fantasy VI on Super Nintendo, or you can play like the world's largest Elder Scrolls game ever created on PC.
Right.
It has a map the size, like the scale of the United Kingdom in a video game, and you have to walk across the whole fucking thing.
And it's empty. Because
it's just
Elder Scrolls.
They just want you to use the fast travel system. Yeah, I mean, the PlayStation is now this opportunity. They're aiming specifically at 16-year-olds. That's what they want. They want to get 16-year-olds, people who maybe grew up gaming, to keep gaming, and they want to get people who aren't fucking nerds and dorks to game, right? The people who wear backwards caps and wrap around sunglasses.
And do skateboard.
That's right.
Exactly.
The Poochies of the world.
That's unfair. If any gaming system is going to be Poochie, it's definitely the N-Gage.
Yes.
Nobody wants it.
That shit floated away and died, and no one ever spoke about it again. Also, I had one.
You did? Was it the original model, or was it like the version 2?
It was the version 2.
Okay.
It was a really bad cell phone and an even worse shitty Game Boy.
Yeah. You could play like original Tomb Raider on a very weirdly tall screen.
Yeah. How do I go forward? Simple. You use the 5 button. What a fucking dumb idea.
So what wasn't a dumb idea was Sony being like, we're going to use optical media. We're going to make something that's very cheap to produce because RPGs are going to be big. And if you make something that's so big, it has to fit on 2 things. Better it be 2 discs instead of 2 fucking cartridges.
Because that was so much of what the PlayStation was it wasn't just a game console, right? It was a multimedia experience.
And discs made everything cheaper as well. I mean, one of the reasons why the 64 shit and died so hard, it was really expensive to develop software for the cartridges, and the cartridges themselves were really expensive to produce.
Because back in the day, putting like 16 or 32 megs of flash memory on a cartridge was really fucking expensive.
But think of all the money they saved on piracy.
Piracy is a huge part of it, but also Nintendo has control over that. And this was still being run by the Yamauchi family. I mean, this is an old Kyoto company that was founded in the 1800s on its 3rd president, who was the grandson of the son-in-law of the original founder.
Right.
When he came into power after his grandfather had a stroke and he was like, let me take over the company, he fired every other family member. He's like, it needs to be just me.
Okay, so he did what I would do if the Kassabians had a family. If I took over, I would fire all of us because, one, I know we're all shit employees because I am one.
This was like a big dog kind of thing. You want to get with Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't need you. And so Nintendo had worked with Sony on making an optical disc drive add-on for either the Famicom or the Super Famicom. I think it was the Super Famicom. It was a little bit later. Then when Sony made this thing, they were like, cool, we're not going to fucking fuck off. Like,
because Nintendo was trying to big dog them, and they were like, well, you can't do this without us. We're too important. And Sony was like, the fuck we can't.
Yeah. So we're like, we're going to make a new competitor in the market because like Sega's not going to make it, guys. Let's not kid ourselves.
I had one of those too. I'm like the graveyard of shitty video games.
You had a Sega Saturn?
I had a Sega Saturn, and I had a Zune. I am a library.
Hell yeah.
Yes. I am a library of failure.
But like you were saying, Brian, that very fact, right? This was the opportunity now for Square, which was also fucking sick of getting big dogged by Nintendo, to try something a little bit different.
Yeah, they're very politic about it these days because, I'm playing it on the Switch currently, Final Fantasy VII. Square games do end up back on Nintendo consoles. But there was this like, we're going with Sony because A, we don't like you, and B, like, this is just reasonable to put things on discs. And Nintendo was like, never fucking call us again. And it wasn't until Iwata became president that they rebuilt that relationship. And Square, Square went so fucking scorched earth, they even got Enix not to release Dragon Quest VII on the Nintendo 64.
Really?
Which is the ultimate fucking like kneecap move, you know, like to steal Dragon Quest. I legitimately can't think of anything that could possibly compare to that in today's media, because everything is cross-platform or whatever. But like it would be, I legitimately can't think of something to compare that to, because that's like the ultimate fuck you. And then of course the N64 arguably goes on to fail. Yeah. Maybe not arguably. And if it had Dragon Quest, no matter how much that fucking controller sucked, no matter how much those games cost, the N64 would have succeeded.
Oh yeah. People would have bought that. They would have bought a probably like if there were a sequel to Secret of Mana.
Especially in Japan, right? Yeah. I don't know how much it would have turned Nintendo's like fortunes in America, but in Japan,
they still probably would have been fucked. Yeah. Like the N64 is just a ridiculous machine.
What, you didn't like Glover?
You know what Nintendo got instead? Quest 64, a game made by Imagineer that was basically like, well, they were trying to prove that they could make a Final Fantasy better than Square. And they failed so fucking hard. I did a whole video essay about it. It's in the
back when we were
below.
YouTubers, folks.
Back when we were YouTubers, the very brief time. Go give it a watch to hear the whole story behind that. But essentially, Quest 64 fails, and then Final Fantasy VII goes into development. Square throws a shit ton of money at the game. That was Square's big thing. That was their move.
They just had unlimited money at that point.
It took a very long time for Nintendo to sort of get back on top of RPGs. I mean, you had Paper Mario.
Yeah, that was really the only like
real successful
turn-based
Like, good.
JRPG for Nintendo 64. But then, yeah, like the Game Boy Advance becomes a good home for RPGs. And of
Golden
course,
Sun,
well, the very first
Pokemon.
Game Boy, because you get Pokemon,
course.
which then becomes the largest RPG in history.
Right.
And then Game Boy starts getting Dragon Quest titles as well down the line.
And really, it's Final Fantasy then coming out on Game Boy that gets Nintendo back into the RPG game. But yes, right now we are in the year 1997. The PlayStation is still pretty new, and we've got Sakaguchi, Hironobu Sakaguchi himself, putting this project together to bring a brand new multimedia experience to the Sony PlayStation.
And Sony has very helpfully invested about enough money to own 19% of Squaresoft at this point in time.
Yeah.
That got them so much, though. I mean, the PS1 is
It's a good
truly the
investment.
golden fucking generation when it comes to JRPGs, and I'm a massive JRPG nerd.
Yeah.
Nostalgia has a lot to do with it, of course, but at the same time, just look at everything. Everything was new. Everybody was trying cool, weird shit.
Yeah.
Now you just get the same fucking bullshit churned out of a factory. I mean, is also Square Enix.
Square developing this idea of like, okay, fuck medieval shit. We're going to keep all our stuff. We're going to keep like all of our summons and materia and all the same like rules, but we're going to keep going forward in time.
Right.
We're going to go to like sort of steampunk-ish Final Fantasy VI, and then Final Fantasy VII is just going to be, for the first 10 hours, it's just going to be Akira.
Yeah.
And they got cell phones.
They do.
You could call up your buds, bring them in.
Yeah, it just has one big button so they could use other hoof hands.
I found this quote from Sakaguchi about his artistic and management style. And I just want to keep this in the back of our heads as we talk about Final Fantasy VII, because I find it incredibly illuminating. I guess my style can be a little haphazard. One morning, I might say to the staff, do it this way. And then when they show me what they've done, which is what I asked for, I'll get mad. Why is it like this? That kind of thing happens from time to time. The thing is, my thoughts are always in flux, swirling around and changing in my head. So I might shoot off 10 emails in a row on the same subject. Send an email, change my mind, send another email, think about it some more.
Oh, what a nightmare.
This thing was made in a year.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about Final Fantasy VII. It was made in a goddamn year.
How did nobody on that staff just fucking kill him?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's one of the great mysteries of it, because my hot take about Final Fantasy VII is that it is the Moby Dick of video games. It is the greatest first draft in the history of the medium.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with him being like, coming in one day and be like, how about a snowboarding game?
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean a snowboarding game?
And it happens right after the most impactful moments in video game history.
Yeah.
It knifes all of us, metaphorically and physically, depending on what your character is, through the guts. And then it's just like, you know what really helps the grieving process? Snowboarding, my man. Let's snowboard. I have no idea how this game got made with this psycho at the helm. And it also, look, there's plot holes. Things are really weird in some places, but overall, it works.
It works.
It makes
It does.
sense, which means that the staff that built this from a series of jumbled, drunken emails from Sakaguchi deserve all of the praise that he is getting.
The short development cycle like makes sense because it's like, oh, I can see where like Final Fantasy 15 happens, is where you're getting tons of studio notes for like 15 years from a man with very early onset Alzheimer's.
Oh, no more a baby.
You're basically making a video game for Joe Biden.
I'll tell you, Jack, that Adamantoise, you got to make that battle like 15 real world hours. Okay?
What if they had a car? The car also flew, and the kingdom is called Insomnia.
What if it turns out that the bad guy, he wasn't this at the beginning, but now he's a clown? It's like Kefka, Jack. You know, I knew Kefka. When I worked at the public pool, Kefka used to always come by and he'd jump in the pool with his makeup on. I'd say, hey, get out of the pool there, Betty Davis.
You know what the fun part of Final Fantasy 15 is? Can anybody tell me what the bad guy, who were they? What was his name?
He was a guy who becomes a clown later for some reason.
He's the jester, but he's like the hot jester.
It's fucking pointless. It's all pointless.
He's got a big long coat, and when you first meet him, he just carpools with you. That's the introduction to the villain.
Because that's responsible. It's responsible because Insomnia doesn't have public transit.
You know what does have public transit? You know what does? You know what does?
I'm waiting. Bated breath.
Midgar.
Hey.
Midgar!
Which is the main setting for the first portion of Final Fantasy VII. Now, we're going to go through a lot over the course of this episode, and before I jump into this, I did just want to throw out a special thanks to a guy on Reddit whose screen name is Dub the Bustacles, who put together a truly fantastic plot outline that helped me understand what the fuck was going on. Dub the Bustacles, if you're listening to this, thank you. I also want to thank a website called Jegged, or maybe it's jegged.com.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I also used their walkthrough of this game every time I got stuck.
I did
also
too.
a very useful resource. The game begins in media res.
Ooh.
We've got our hero, Cloud. Cloud is a merc, right? He's fighting alongside this eco-terrorist group called Avalanche. He's been drafted into their service because Avalanche are basically trying to blow up a reactor for reasons that at the beginning of the game are entirely unclear. And this is an intentional choice, right?
Yeah.
The thing begins in media res. I've actually got a little bit of the opening here. For this piece, I'll go ahead and do Barrett, Joe, you do Cloud, AJ, you be Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. Figure out a way to differentiate between them.
Team spare parts. Let's go.
And Brian, you can do the stage directions.
Okay.
Come on, newcomer, follow me.
Barrett runs ahead. Cloud follows, taking out 2 guards who stand in his path. He joins Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse at the gate to the reactor complex, where Jesse is working to open the door.
Wow, you used to be in Soldier, all right. Not every day you find one in a group like Avalanche.
Soldier? Aren't they the enemy? What's he doing with us in Avalanche?
Hold it, Jesse. He was in Soldier. He quit them and now is one of us. Didn't catch your name.
Cloud.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful.
Well, Cloud, I'm...
I don't care what your names are. Once this job's over, I'm out of here.
Barrett comes running over.
The hell y'all doing? I thought I told you never to move in a group. Our target's the North Mako reactor. We'll meet on the bridge in front of it.
Jesse opens the door, and she, Biggs, and Wedge run through. Barrett turns back to Cloud.
Ex-soldier, huh? Don't trust ya. If you push the directional button while pushing the cancel button to run, earlier marked X.
Barrett runs on ahead. Cloud looks up the reactor before following. In front of the reactor, everyone but Wedge heads across the bridge inside.
I'll secure the escape passage. Concentrate on the mission, Cloud. Geez, we're really gonna blow this huge furnace up? This'll be something to see.
Cloud follows the others into the reactor.
This your first time in a reactor?
No, after all, I did work for Shinra, you know.
The planet's full of Mako energy. People here use it every day.
Cloud shrugs.
It's the lifeblood of this planet. But Shinra keeps sucking the blood out with these weird machines.
I'm not here for a lecture. Let's just hurry.
That's it. You're coming with me from now on.
Biggs and I got the code for this door.
Code deciphered.
The first door opens and they run through.
Think how many of our people risked their lives just for this code.
Code deciphered.
Wonder if that's a reference to all the Bothans that died, since he's already a Star Wars character.
To bring them that information.
Probably, yeah.
Cloud pushes the button.
Little by little, the reactors will drain out all the life, and that'll be that.
It's not my problem.
The planet's dying, Cloud.
The only thing I care about is finishing this job before security and the robo-guards come. Good choice, not trying to redo the Barrett voice.
Yeah.
And he's
We had a
explaining
discussion
to-
about this before recording.
He's trying to explain to everything. Cloud's like, yeah, don't care about theory, bro. Just give me my money.
Give me thing to stab. So I named my character Dingus
Right.
for this, and it makes everyone in the game into like a real passive aggressive asshole.
Yeah.
My favorite being Barrett's line, "The planet's dying, Dingus," was my first jam. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a great that fucking run.
That's
I
tasty.
named mine Tit, so it just kind of makes everybody misogynist.
Everybody is harassing Cloud.
Cloud, who's got the smallest tits in the party.
I mean,
And that
you're not wrong.
includes Red 13.
It certainly does. This is a pretty good, I think, example of how this game does exposition.
Yeah.
And when it works well, which I think this is a good example of, as far as the writing of this game goes anyway,
Yeah.
it's just expecting you to keep up. And you learn pretty promptly, there's these reactors. There's something called Mako energy. It's really powerful. This Mako energy is also tremendously destructive toward the environment. Then the game throws you right into a combat situation. You get to play around with the mechanics for the first time. This is a pretty similar battle system to the one in Chrono Trigger insofar as it uses active time battle.
This is the battle system that they started with Final Fantasy IV, active time battle, which I have already gone on record multiple times on multiple podcasts as not being a fan.
It's so funny because I think it's one of my favorite battle systems. I think it is the best battle system that Final Fantasy has come up with over the years.
I don't know. I really liked 15's just hold the button until the fight ends.
Yeah. It's great. And all of their attempts, like the newest Final Fantasies, is effectively just hack and slash. And I really don't like it. The remakes are doing an interesting version of it.
Yeah, I actually
which I think
really
is
like
a
the
real
combat in
fun
the remake.
spin.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I think the remakes are the best battle system that Final Fantasy's come up with since this one.
Okay.
It's been a very long fucking time.
But I guess the big question that I have at this point is, how does this introduction set the tone for the rest of the game? And for that matter, all of the RPGs that have come after it. Because I feel like this is one of the most influential intros in the history of gaming.
I think everything that this game does is probably some of the most influential. Maybe it's just because it's a smaller part of the greater whole. But I think it introduces you to the world immediately. It introduces you to the group Avalanche immediately. And it also kind of gives you this idea that they're not really to be taken seriously because they're kind of bumbling dipshits. And outside of Barrett, who really just wants to commit a Shinra mass shooting with his gun arm that nobody remarks on ever.
You think that means it's a common thing in this world,
And
but
it's
there's only
not.
one other person in the whole world that you meet that has one?
Look, I just feel like it would be remarked upon more. As
If
a
I
group
saw
of
a guy
people,
with a gun for a hand, I'd probably mention it. Maybe not to him directly, but to somebody.
Yeah, it introduces you to everybody, and as much as I love this game, it does introduce you to Cloud's personality, which never changes.
He gets a little bit more optimistic, I think, near the end.
Yeah.
But you're right. He is always like, I don't really want to be here.
Yeah.
And the way that the game sort of counteracts that is that Barrett really wants to be there. And everyone else in your party really wants to be there, which makes Cloud the odd one out and also gives him somewhere to go, which I think is a lot more than can be said for a lot of RPG protagonists.
And a lot of RPG protagonists are, silent protagonists. They're for you to imprint on. And Cloud is very talkative.
Yeah.
For as taciturn as he is.
Yeah, and it's a trend. When we've already talked about Final Fantasy VIII, I mean, Squall in 8 is kind of like constantly memed as taciturn, very short, never I think he says whatever more than any other line the whole game. But he's really not that much different than Cloud.
Yeah.
And Cloud kind of gets a pass because he's just part of a better overall game.
He's hotter too.
Yeah, I mean, I love his hooves and his eyes and no mouth.
Yeah, the little chibi versions of them, and also because you get the little chibi versions of them in like the overworld and things, but then when you're in battle, you get the fully rendered, like full tall boy versions of everybody.
Still no mouth, no hands, no
Still
feet.
must scream. Or in the case of Cloud, I think talk slightly above a whisper, maybe.
But this sequence is, frankly, I think it's just fantastic.
It's
you
really
start
cool.
with the cool CGI opening that's like Aerith in town, and you see the whole fucking everything of Midgar. You see the train, and you're like, what's this train about? And then you're killing people, and then you're descending very deep into this place that it really does feel like it shouldn't exist. And the music's all electronic. I mean, it's always electronic. It's a video game, but you know what I mean. It's it's got that. It's very cyberpunk, and it's something that Square has actually done quite a bit before. Like your typical game is your typical RPG is like, oh, I'm a little guy in a small town. I go to the fair, and then something happens, and then I have to eventually kill an evil king.
So Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger, Pokemon, like whatever.
Dragon Quest,
Golden Sun. The Lord of the Rings.
I think this intro does something else. Is it makes you feel like the game is grounded in a reality.
Yes.
In a way, before it hits you with, like, of course, the massive fucking curveball where, again, your friends are teaming up to kill a man who wants to be God.
Yeah.
But, like, it starts off at a place where this whole game could be the storyline.
Yeah, right.
And it would still rule.
Which
like,
is why the remake part 1 was just the Midgar piece, right? I mean, it is. It's a world of its own. And I think something that it does very smartly is in terms of the exposition, how it introduces the characters, rather than doing something that is a plague upon all video game writing ever, where somebody will show up and be like, as you know, I blah, 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 blah. And the game kind of does do this a little bit later.
Yeah, once we get to the segment of the game where everyone has a flashback.
Yeah. It just, you have to infer what these people are all about based on how they act and speak. And I think that's really smart.
And again, this is something that Square has actually done before in Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy IV, right? When you're like Cecil in the airship and you're just like subjugating people for a while and then you get betrayed. This game, however, I don't know, it does it incredibly well. And it does a really interesting thing where you do this first raid, you blow up the Mako reactor, and then you're still doing the same thing. There's no reversal yet. You're still part of the terror cell. You're still working to make the planet better by destroying Shinra and everything. And you're not starting with like a status quo that you're trying to restore over the course of the game. You're trying to upend it from the very first second.
And they do a really good job of making Shinra look so overwhelmingly evil that you just assume that, okay, this is the antagonist for this game. When in reality, by disc 2, you kind of forget they exist.
Yeah, unfortunately. To the point of Shinra and sort of what their whole deal is, this is the evil corporation that owns all of these reactors that are basically destroying the planet.
They're sucking the lifeblood out of the earth.
They also
basically
own most of the planet.
Yes.
Like there was a big war and they're like a corporation that has taken over just about every place except for a couple small towns.
Because again, this is Cyberpunk, right? They are the corpo. This is a very typical part of the genre.
Shinra is the world with the exception of pretty much Wutai.
As Cloud and his fellow Avalanche members sort of make their way out of the area where they just blew up the reactor, Cloud briefly sees this girl selling flowers, and you get the sense she's going to be important later on. So plant a flag in your head for that one.
Yeah.
They all hop on a train. They take advantage of Midgar's very useful mass transit system, and they go back to Sector 7. That's where the Avalanche home base is. There's a girl named Tifa there, who I named Booba, because that's one of her main characteristics.
Especially in the battle screen, every time you win, she does like a stretch. She's got like these suspenders. People were mad when the remake came out because they're like, her tits aren't huge anymore. And they were still
huge.
They're enormous.
But maybe not quite as cartoonishly large as in the original.
They're really mad that the titties aren't as sharp as they used to be in the PS1 days. You can really poke an eye out with those things.
I want my hand to bleed.
I like that angular body.
Give me that Lara Croft any day.
Give it on an N gauge so she's very long.
The longer the better.
There's just nothing to her left or right.
So Tifa is a childhood friend of Cloud's. And the big thing that she does back at Sector 7, which is, again, just sort of the homey neighborhood where everybody hangs out.
The slum that exists under, because this is, again, Cyberpunk. We have a multi-layered city where the nice parts of the city are way up in the sky and the slums are all on the ground.
It's a goddamn pizza.
Yes.
If I remember.
That's right. So she's the proprietor of this bar called Sector 7. It's the hangout for Avalanche. And basically, Cloud gets back and he's like, yeah, fuck this. I'm out of here. But Tifa manages to sort of intercept him just as he's about to leave and reminds him of their childhood. Joe, of course, you'll be Cloud again. Brian, I figure you can be Tifa, and I'll do stage directions.
Listen, Cloud, I'm asking you, please join us.
Sorry, Tifa.
The planet is dying. Slowly but surely, it's dying. Someone has to do something.
So let Barrett and his buddies do something about it. It's got nothing to do with me.
So, you're really leaving? You're just gonna walk right out, ignoring your childhood friend?
How could you say that?
You forgot the promise, too.
Promise?
So you did forget. Remember? Cloud, it was 7 years ago.
The scene shifts to show the well in the center of Nibelheim. That's the town they grew up in. The sky is bright with stars.
Look, the well. Do you remember? She's younger. I had to go a little higher.
That's good, Brian.
Yeah.
It's even lower.
I thought you'd never come, and now it's getting a little cold.
In the memory, a young Tifa comes to join a young Cloud at the well.
Sorry I'm late. You said you wanted to talk to me about something?
I'm leaving for Midgar,
All the boys are leaving our town.
but I'm different from all of them. I'm not just going to find a job. I'm gonna join Soldier. I'm gonna be the best there is, just like Sephiroth.
Isn't it hard to join Soldier?
I probably won't be able to come back for this town for a while.
Tifa makes a sobbing motion into her hands.
Huh?
Will you be in the newspapers if you do well?
I'll try.
Hey, why don't we make a promise? If you get really famous and I'm ever in a bind, you come save me, all right?
What?
Whenever I'm in trouble, my hero will come and rescue me. I want to at least experience that once.
What?
Come on, promise me.
All right, I promise.
A shooting star flashes across the sky. We're back in the present day.
You remember now, don't you? Our promise?
Well, I'm not a hero and I'm not famous. I can't keep the promise.
There's like 2 sets of ellipses there. That was a good read, yeah.
But you got your childhood dream, didn't you? You joined Soldier, so come on. You've got to keep your promise.
I have to point out that how much it annoys me that for some reason that's never fully explained, Soldier is in all caps, like it's an abbreviation for something.
Yeah.
I don't know why that bugs me so much.
So this is kind of our emotional grounding for the backstory of Cloud and Tifa. 2 childhood friends, alike in dignity in Fair Verona, where we lay our scene.
The game has sort of 2 emotional cores in terms of like Cloud relationships. It is the old, it is the past, it is Tifa. And then there is the new relationship that will eventually arise with Aerith.
Right.
Or Aerith. Oh
Aerith.
boy. It's both.
I'm still so confused about that. I've never heard the story about how we ended up with 2 different names.
Her name was intended to be Aerith in English because her name was supposed to recall both air and earth.
Oh.
Of course, the
long
theta
enough.
sound doesn't exist in Japanese, so her name has the S sound in it. And it was just a miscommunication with, one guy in a basement in Boston or whatever.
Right.
That's why in all subsequent versions of it, it's always Aerith. And because I didn't play this game back in the day, I didn't have a PlayStation or anything. I've always sort of known Final Fantasy VII by reputation, and so I've always known her as Aerith instead of Eris.
I mean, I played this for the first time in PS1, and I knew her as Eris.
Yeah.
And since it's been switched, in my brain, it's not switching.
Yeah,
I've played
it's just
Eris.
No, it's just Eris. It's just Eris, yeah.
I mean, either are completely acceptable.
We're going to
is the
say
thing.
both. We're just going to keep saying both as we go through this.
So if you're going to ding us in the comments for not adhering to canon.
And I'm going to ding you in fucking real life.
That's right. Fuck you.
What does digging look like, Brian?
You know what it looks like,
You
AJ.
know what it looks like. We can't say it for legal reasons.
Oh, I see.
But we will
Beat you
do
to
it.
death with a bag of hammers is what I'll do.
So that's a credible fucking threat.
Oh, no.
This is also where we get the introduction of the materia system. This is Final Fantasy VII's unique approach to magic, where basically, rather than just having spells that you learn as part of your character, all of the spells, which consume your MP, your secondary currency, essentially. Like you got 2 bars, just like everything. You got the HP, the MP. The MP is consumed when you do your magic, and the magic is stored in these little orbs. The orbs can be equipped either on your weapon or on an accessory that is on your person. Different weapons and accessories have different quantities of, I guess, materia slots available
And
in
also
them.
have different, some of them have these sort of double slots where you can use an enhancer materia on another piece of materia.
Right. So like as an example, there is an all materia that when you use it will apply whatever magic you pair it with on all allies or enemies, depending on if it's a positive or an attack or a buff.
Yeah, if it's just fire, you can hit one enemy, but if you have fire and all, you'll burn everybody on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, and it leads to a very versatile system because it means that no one character is like pinned down to a specific class.
Yeah.
Like you can have a Barret that is just a spellcaster, and you can have an Eris who is like not necessarily a healer, even though they start her off that way. She can be a full offensive magic user.
This is a more complex mechanic than most RPGs of its time.
It's as complex and as not complex as you want it to be. Yeah. I think that's one that, like, even when I play the game to this day, which is frequently, I still learn fun little ways to fuck with the materia system.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the best equipping magic systems that in any JRPG I've ever played, because it is as much and as little as you want it to be.
Yeah. And you pretty quickly have opportunities to experiment with the system, because basically the Avalanche gang, they board another train. They're detected on board on their way to another reactor, and they escape through the subway tunnels. And this is where you start getting random encounters. And this is where all of these mechanics we've talked about so far start to come together. And I guess I'm just curious to hear at this point, as we hear that classic battle theme that we're going to hear hundreds and hundreds of times, how we feel about the way the game's systems work or don't work together in combat.
I think at this point of the game, I was still getting my ass whipped because I had never played anything quite like this. But everything worked. Like, everything hums. Everything works together perfectly well. Of course, for me at this point, during my first playthrough, the materia certainly wasn't, but everything else was. The limit breaks were fucking cool as shit.
We should talk about the limit breaks.
Yeah, I think at this point, Cloud would have had Braver, and that was it.
The way that limits work in this game is that you have a bar alongside your time bar, because again, this is active time battle. You get to attack when that bar is full. There's a second bar that fills up as you take damage. That is your limit bar. And once you have filled up on enough damage, which scales with your level, the bar will start flashing, and you can perform a special maneuver called a limit break.
Yeah. And in fact, not only can you, it actually replaces your regular attack. You cannot do a regular attack until you do the limit break.
Which is really fucking aggravating later on in the game when you come up,
especially if you have Vincent.
Yeah, because you end up like maybe you want to store up all your limit breaks to get to a boss that's kicking your ass. Good fucking luck.
Well, that's okay, because if you play the remakes, there's just a button that gives you limit breaks forever.
There's some quality of life improvements for the PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII, of the original game, where you can speed up everything by 3 times. You can get rid of random encounters, and you can give yourself unlimited limit breaks that also restores your health and mana.
Yeah,
and
same with
basically
the Switch
makes
version.
you invincible.
It's not a total invincibility, because if something hits you hard enough to knock you out, you'll still get knocked out. But if it hits you down to anything, you'll immediately restore that health.
I've gotten so used to playing it at 3 times speed that playing it at the original speed feels impossibly slow.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you that is any fucking PS1 JRPG.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still play them frequently in emulators, and thank God for fucking emulators, because you can speed them up, because those games are slower than shit.
My commitment to ethics in video game journalism means that I will always play games on original hardware. So I did, in fact, get physical discs for this and played it on a real PS2 that was hooked up via the old school cables.
It wasn't a PS1, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, it's
so much for your fucking ethics.
It's not emulation. It's still running it. It's still running it as hardware. They have the separate hardware layer for PS1.
Yeah.
My point is,
next month, Josh is forcing us all to play a game on the N gauge.
But the reason I did it was so that I could get a feel for what the thing was like originally. And you're right. It sucks dog dick. It's real fucking bad, especially when you start getting random encounter after random encounter during an area where you can't figure out where you're supposed to be going.
Yep. Yeah, and those random encounter rates are high.
Very high.
And there's not even
very, very high.
Other games will have like a saleable item that will turn off random encounters for a number of steps, like repel in Pokemon or whatever.
Right.
This game does not have that. There is never any option unless you're playing the remake, and you can just turn it off whenever you feel like it. And Josh, it is so good. It's so good.
I believe it.
This game is supposed to be like 30 to 40 hours long, I guess, if you play it on regular speed. And like 50% of that time is you just trying to get from point A to point B and going through all the random encounters, because it's like, oh, you hit something, zoom in, swirl around, go down. It's like, God damn it.
Big, long, especially when you fight an enemy that has like long ass animations and you're like, I don't fucking care. Just end it.
This is the 16th of you I've killed already. I've done a genocide against the Marlboros. Leave me alone.
But back in 1997, this was so fucking cool.
Oh, yeah.
These were the nice graphics.
It fucking ruled, but it still got old.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, when I was like 10 or 11, I still thought it was really, really cool. But at the same time, those constant random encounters is something that you obviously can't plan for. And it slowly eats away at your items. So you kind of have to like really hope that these areas aren't going to be so bad. But the random encounter rate in Final Fantasy VII wasn't as bad as some games were back then.
True.
No, not at all.
Compared to games today, it's really, really high.
Well, I mean, I was surprised when we played Chrono Trigger how little the enemy encounters bothered me. But that's because they're on the overworld map. You see them and they run at you, and they're not set up in such a way where it's that annoying.
Yeah.
Like, once you've gotten them, you've gotten them. And unless you go back to an entire area like from the big overworld map, they stay gone.
Yeah. And that's why those Mario RPGs and like Tales of Symphonia feel better too, because it's like, well, I could have avoided that. I failed to avoid it. So now we're in the fight.
This sort of shows you where Final Fantasy VII sits in terms of the evolution of the genre.
Right.
It is bringing through all of these incredible multimedia presentation qualities, and it's doing a lot with story that these games haven't done before. But some of these mechanics are still bound down to something that was invented because the tech wasn't there to do something more complex. And so you're still bounded to this older age of gameplay that frankly is just often not very fun.
There's a lot of not fun things about this game.
I mean, one of the ways that Final Fantasy VII weathers this transition to 3D, you look at a lot of franchises that did make it successfully, they really had to change what they were doing. Final Fantasy doesn't actually change what it's doing in any way that's beyond their usual new iterations on the game. This is essentially a two-dimensional game built on 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of walking around on 2-dimensional tiles as a sprite, now you're walking on a big JPEG with like an invisible 3-dimensional architecture on it.
And every once in a while, it is completely unclear what you can and cannot walk on,
so you
which
have
is
to
a
hit
problem.
the select button and it'll show you the little arrows that point to where your character is and where the exits are.
One really funny example of that is the crane that you get just outside of Sector 7, I think, where
on your way to Eris's house,
this was infamously like people could not figure out where on that screen to go, so much so that in the remake, as a fun little Easter egg, they made the crane functional and reworked the level, essentially.
There was so many, like I talked before about how cool the backgrounds looked.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems with them.
Right.
Yes.
Is that they're so well done, it's like trying to navigate a painting, but only like 10% of it is navigable.
And that's actually a problem that plagues a lot of modern games too, and the remakes of Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. Everything looks so good, what can I interact with and what I can't is very unclear sometimes.
Yeah.
Put yellow on it.
But that's kind of one of the nice things, though. I mean, that's one of the ways that you make a game that is physically quite small seem much bigger. And Final Fantasy VII does it very, very well. Like half of the world map, for example, when we get to that point, can't really do anything with it.
No.
But it's like, oh, wow, I have this whole world. Like, no, you don't. You have like 5 towns, 10 towns, whatever it is.
You can access maybe 2 at a time.
Yeah. And Midgar itself, even now when I replay it, they do a very good job making Midgar as a city feel like a city.
Yeah.
When in
Right. And
reality,
it's only like a handful of screens.
Yeah.
it's like 3 to 5 screens, Shinra building not counting.
This whole Midgar section, which is what everyone remembers the most, is 8 to 10 hours of the whole game. And once you leave, you basically never come back. And it's so linear, and it's so good in presenting you with new stuff all the time that it doesn't really matter that it's linear. And every space that you go to, you essentially go to twice, and you're usually sort of going at it from the back the second time around to give it that little bit of variety.
I mean, like when I'm playing video games, Midgar is the first city in video games to me that really feels alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
They did that very, very well. I can't think of anything that even come close up to this point.
I mean, I think a big piece of that, along with just, the sheer, I guess, scope of it, is the way that you get little areas of it that are so uniquely well defined. So you can imagine what so many other areas might look like.
And because of your position, most of the city is inaccessible to you. So it remains sort of this large mystery. You see it through windows or just from the sense of scale, but you can't reach it because, you're Cloud and you're from the slums.
Because one really good example of that, I think, is Wall Market, which is where you end up heading pretty quickly thereafter, right? So Cloud has a big battle. He wakes up in a church next to that flower girl from before.
Yeah.
This is Eris/Aerith, who we were talking about before. And he pretty promptly becomes her bodyguard.
Yeah.
We'll learn a bit more about her as we progress, but basically, she seems to be some sort of magical girl.
Literally, yes.
And I love that the first interaction you have with her as her bodyguard is to drop barrels on people as she's trying to run away, and you can fuck it up so bad.
On the Young Turks.
Yeah.
This is something that rings out to me much differently now that I'm almost 37 than when I was 10, is that I'm doing battle against the Young Turks. Yeah, I mean, it's like, this is for not only me on the internet, but also my ancestors.
Yeah, there's this group of other mercenaries called the Turks.
Are they mercenaries? I'm pretty sure they just work for Shinra. Like, I think they're like a Shinra hit squad.
Right, but they're purely in it as like a job, and whenever they're off the clock, they're not doing anything. Like, you'll run into them in a bar and they'll be like, well, you're our enemy, but we're not getting paid overtime, so
this is
strong union benefits.
Yeah, they're like Pinkertons, I guess.
Sure, I mean, they're Team Rocket if they just really didn't give a shit about Pikachu.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Team Rocket if you could beat Team Rocket to literal death and win the Pokemon games.
Yep. And so the Turks have also been part of like this foiling of your second bombing of the Mako reactor.
Right. Story of my life, man.
And the barrel thing is really illustrative because there are a lot of these moments where you'll have a unique interaction that you've never done before. And if you get it right, you might get some bonuses. You can get it completely wrong, and the game will keep going. It does not game over you to fuck these things. This is very much like, how do we make this game more accessible to an audience that hasn't played these games before?
And you'd never do it again.
Well, and what's so great, too, is if you fail, the payoff is oftentimes better than if you succeed because something really funny will happen.
Yeah. And with the barrels, it's just ridiculous. It's
this game has got jokes.
Yeah.
In a way that I was not anticipating the first time I sat down to play it, because it is sort of like this monument of like gaming history, and it is so funny. There's a guy in Walmart who, when you walk in,
Walmart?
The local Walmart.
No, that's
in
good.
Midgar.
We're going to call it Walmart from here on out. I like that.
You walk into the shop and the guy is just like lying horizontally facing away from you.
Yes.
And then when you like talk to him, he rolls back over with his hand under his head and goes, "We're closed now." And then rolls back the other way. And I'm like, that man is jerking off in his store.
Yeah, I love a guy who sees a business opportunity. He's like, what if I made my gooning game public?
Well, and there's another really good example of the humor here, too, which is that at Walmart, and Walmart, again, is like the Vice District, right?
Yeah.
It's where you go for your hookers and jazz.
It certainly was in my hometown.
Like, you're going there to find Tifa because Tifa's gone missing, and apparently she's been captured by a local gangster named Don Corneo. What ends up happening here is that Eris comes up with a plan for how to get Tifa away from the clutches of the vile Don Corneo.
This is the mansion of Don Corneo, the most powerful man in Walmart. Look, the Don's not into men, so don't let me catch you around here again. Hey, and you got another cute one with you.
Eris and Cloud step aside to talk.
Hey, this looks like the Don's mansion. I'll go take a look. I'll tell Tifa about you.
She starts for the door.
No, you can't.
Why?
You do know what kind of place this is, don't you?
Then what am I supposed to do? You want to go in with me?
Well, being a man, that'll be pretty hard. Besides, if I bust in there, it'll cause too much commotion. But I can't let you go in alone. Oh, man.
At this point, Aerith starts laughing, but Cloud continues without noticing.
First, we need to find out if Tifa's all right. What's so funny, Eris?
Cloud, why don't you dress up like a girl? It's the only way.
Fuck yeah. What?
Aerith runs over to the doorman before he can protest further.
Just wait. I've got a cute friend I want to bring.
Eris, I can't.
You are worried about Tifa, aren't you? Then come on, hurry.
A friend? Sounds pretty good to me. That'll make the Don happy too. Who knows? Maybe I can.
Okay, stop it, you pervert.
This leads to another cross-dressing mission, which is like
Yes.
you can be as successful or unsuccessful in this. The way to be best at cross-dressing is kind of vague. I followed a guide for this. Because
Yeah,
I
me too.
wanted
I did too.
Because I had played through this section before a couple years ago, and then I put down the game. So this time I was like, I'm gonna fuck Don Corneo in his ass.
Sure.
The
And-
first time I did it, I just made the worst girl on earth,
Yeah.
and just managed to sneak inside.
Yeah, it's very possible to just end up. You still succeed, but you just get a different scene.
Right.
And the best outcome is that instead of being taken to the room of one of the henchmen, you get taken to the room of Don Corneo himself. And this house of ill repute has all kinds of things going on with it.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on here. This is like probably one of the most, well, not the most, but second most iconic scenes in this entire fucking game.
It's also pretty incredible that all of this is going on in a game that is rated T for teen.
in the 90s.
There's a satanic ritual happening behind one door.
It's
There's an
fine
old.
if it's a satanic ritual if they paid for it, okay?
Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And then there's an old married couple who are gonna
They're
bang
fucking,
in another
like,
one of the
crazy.
rooms.
They just like to watch.
There's one room where Cloud gets sexually assaulted.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, there's the
He's just hanging out with his gay friends.
If that's what you say, Brian, I don't know.
He does say no an awful lot and stop, and they don't.
that is a bit of a problem. So this is actually something that's been still happening in JRPGs to this modern day. Is whenever they show even gay characters they don't say are gay characters, they come up with the most offensive stereotypes.
Yeah.
You can imagine this happens to this day in Persona games.
Yeah, Persona 5, notoriously.
It's been a big fucking problem.
They tried to fix it and made it worse.
Yes, I mean, this is a game that came out in the 90s, so you don't expect anything that isn't offensive to be in this game.
Yeah.
But it is certainly part of a larger problem in the industry.
And looking at like Japanese portrayals of gay guys at this point in time, it's always like bara. It's always like Choaniki, like huge muscular men in Speedos. You know, in one room, you can have this total like dissociative meltdown because Cloud has some weird things that pop into his head whenever he's unconscious.
Right.
And then you'll find yourself being resuscitated by this enormous muscular masseur. And then in another room, you just get nude and take a bath with a bunch of the other boys.
I think what surprised me, though, was that the bit about cross-dressing, to me at least, didn't feel transphobic. It just
it
felt
didn't at all.
silly in the way that like playing with gender is sometimes fun and sometimes silly.
And of course, the cross-dressing, that wasn't going to go away. That's in the remakes. But the gay guys are all gone.
Interesting.
There's no hanging out with your muscle men in the Tom of Finland room.
That's one of the ways it's also kind of glaring is like instead of fixing this to make it like that play the same kind of role in a way that isn't so offensive, like just delete it.
Yeah, they took away my meat.
Yeah.
Because
They took
I want
my
to see
meat,
big
Josh.
I want to see big meaty men slapping meat. All right.
But
You
that's
took it away from me.
I think that's the thing, though, right? Is
We used
that
to be a proper country.
there is this real humor to all of the interactions that you have, and are some of them maybe written in a way that is slightly less than
woke?
Maybe it doesn't quite comport with the best sensibilities, shall we say? Like, yeah, whatever. But you lose, I think, a really important piece of texture when you just get rid of it altogether.
Yeah,
They had a
for
real
sure.
opportunity to like reimagine it because so much of remake is reimagining the original text, and they just decided it's not worth it.
get it out.
Especially in such a scene that everybody knows about. Like there could be such a good way to reimagine this in a way that still isn't transphobic, which even today is still a bit of a leap depending on what the media is. And in a way where these guys who are very obviously played as gay in the original Final Fantasy VII in a very offensive way are instead not made so offensive, but also you have representation of their, in fact, being gay people in Midgar, because of course there would be.
Of course there would be. And it stands to reason also that this den of iniquity is where all sorts of like crazy shit would be going.
I mean, of course. You look at the history, Stonewall was a bar run by the mafia. Right. That's just how this kind of shit used to work. And also just the nature of camp being what it is. A queer person comes across this totally offensive 90s portrayal of queerness. And it's just, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I don't even think they should have changed it for the remake. They should have just kept it exactly the same.
Just dial it up. Give him even more Tom of Finland coded characteristics.
And even going off of like how you said, like this is a den of play. This is a place where lots of weird shit would be going on. Like that's only reinforced by this game because he's going place to place, very clearly stating, I plan on cross dressing. Everybody's like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no one cares.
Let's fucking go, buddy.
And like one guy's like, oh, I've never made a dress for a man before. That's going to be awesome.
You go into the room with all of the sex workers and they're like, you can't be back here in their little bee outfits. And then Cloud's like, I need makeup. And they were like, well, why didn't you say so?
Buzz, buzz.
Buzz, buzz. I'm a little bee. It must also needs to be said that the room where you do have the psychotic break is called the fuck room.
Yes.
And I love that so much. But it's bleeped out.
Yeah,
all
they use
cursing in this
comic
game
strip swears.
is so clever. I think that's a very clever translation choice in a game that has some very poor translation choices.
And this is a scene that you wouldn't get today, and maybe not such, again, like we said with the offensive shit taking it out in a game rated teen.
No,
that's for fucking sure. Like, oh no, my character. Imagine running that by the ESRB or whatever they're called. Like, oh, and then the character's gonna go into the fuck room. They're like, excuse me.
What? Also, it's like I would be curious to hear if you're listening to this show right now and you are a queer person and this game and this piece specifically stands out in your memory as part of your journey of figuring out who you were, I would love to hear about it.
I'm not a queer person, but I will say as someone that struggled a lot with like the concepts of masculinity and everything as a straight guy, and with
in the military,
and with all of these incredibly toxic portrayals of things that I'm supposed to be. Like as a young kid, it was actually really nice and formative to see someone who's supposed to be like this kind of silent fucking badass. Like, I'll put on a fucking dress. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I was like, it doesn't really matter what I wear. It's like none of it. Like, this is all just fucking this is all bullshit.
It's all performance. Even just looking at our Discord, like you can see that people like there is a way to read Cloud as trans very easily. There is this whole element of like this difference between who he presents as and who he actually is, and how he's still figuring out who he is. He says, "I'm not who I am" at one point.
Certainly later on in the story.
Yeah.
That will become increasingly important over the course of this game.
So they do finally manage to recover Tifa. They all move on to Sector 7. Eris gets captured by Shinra, and they also just drop one of the big metal plates on the slum and obliterate thousands of civilians immediately.
Yeah, basically everyone you met in the first couple hours of the game are now dead.
Except for like Barrett and Barrett's daughter Marlene.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
In fact, the guys who did your tutorials, they have a second tutorial place later on. They appear to you as ghosts in that area.
Because they got squished.
But this is shocking.
It is.
It is.
Still.
I will say it's like for me, the first time I played, because I played this before I played 6. 6 famously has a scene where everybody in a castle gets poisoned, right? This was the first time in a video game that I was just like, holy fucking shit. Because that whole time, when you have standard video game brain for the day, you never think that, no, everybody is going to die. There's always, when you succeed, you beat the timer, you do this, you do that, everybody's fucking saved all the time. It's like, no, they're dead. You killed them.
And I think that the timer thing is an important thing to note that, earlier in the game, there's all of these little, like, basically interactive cutscenes where a timer counts down. So your expectation is always it'll all pull out in the nick of time, and it just doesn't.
Yeah. Right. You see the
just did
newscaster who is reporting on the news get crushed in real time on the TV. Like his feed cuts out as it barrels down, and it's just like, it's harrowing.
And this is a false flag. The Shinra is like, oh, Avalanche did that to you.
Right.
And at that point, well, what are you going to do? Just be like, nuh-uh? You know, you can't.
Alex Jones and Nibelheim.
Yeah.
This is a Shinra false flag.
They're turning the freaking clouds gay.
You are so powerless.
I tell you what you do. You just go right to Shinra headquarters. That's what you do. They go to this huge skyscraper, right?
Again, really good at scale in this game.
Yes.
Really good at making things feel big and feel like they take a long time to travel through.
Even though there are only like, I think 4 or 5 maps that you traverse over the course of going up and down this building.
Even Shinra's HQ, which, you know, when I was a kid feels very, very big when you go up and down it. But like when you play it as an adult, like, no, because I mean, it gets you because you're on floor like 80, you're on floor 70 or whatever. But in reality, you only go to like 10 floors tops.
One really clever
Unless
trick.
you climb the stairs.
Well, and I was going to say, that's a really clever trick that it uses is that if you choose to go up the stairs, you just go up the same level over and over and over again for like, I want to say 10 screens or something like that.
And people get angry and tired as you're just running up stairs after stairs after stairs. And then Tifa calls Barrett the R word.
Yes, that's right.
She does.
Yeah.
It was
really great
90s.
translation
It was
choices.
a guy from Boston doing the translation.
Yeah, this is definitely like, if it's a guy from Boston, we should be happy that they only use the R word.
Right? I just also briefly wanted to say there are computers with screens you can read. There are notes dropped around. There are key codes. Final Fantasy VII is an immersive sim.
It's not.
Anyway,
it has an immersive sim section.
It's got vents.
No, it's not an immersive
There's
sim
vent
section.
crawling. It's an M-sim.
It's an RPG. This is what RPGs are, Josh.
The gang discovers a whole bunch of weird like bioengineering shit that Shinra has been up to. They finally track down Eris. She's trapped in a capsule. There's this talking lion, fox, dog hybrid thing who's like menacing. Like he's threatening to rape her.
No, that is one part that always throws me for a fucking loop every time I replay this game because I kind of forget it happens. Red, the character that this ends up being, isn't threatening to rape her. He is put in there by Hojo with the express purpose to do so, and he doesn't want to.
He is, as he puts it later on, there's a little bit of dialogue. He's basically putting on a show for Hojo. He never intended to actually do it. But again, super fucking jarring for a game that is rated T for teen.
And also all this bioengineering shit as well is completely out of nowhere.
Yeah.
In this lab, you rescue Red 13, who is this giant cat who talks, who then becomes part of your
Is that
party.
A cat? That's a dog.
He's basically a cat.
He's a doggo.
That's a dog.
He's a wolf man.
He's a fox. He's a lion.
That's a dog. I'll die on this hill.
He's a cat. So once you rescue this cat,
That's it. I'm out of here.
you also see all this other stuff around the lab. This thing that just has the word Genova on it, and it's like a fucking headless torso.
Ew.
Creepy.
Yeah.
And then you keep going.
It's like a very clearly female torso, like a beheaded female torso. Very weird.
So you meet President Shinra, you get thrown in jail.
Right.
And then all of a sudden your jail is open and every guard is dead.
Everybody's dead.
This is very Metal Gear Solid, which came out a year later with Ninja's appearance.
Yeah.
And you just follow this trail of blood.
It's so cool.
All the way up
So
to
well done.
President Shinra, who has a knife in his back, and it is Sephiroth's blade, and Cloud is like, fuck, you've only heard this name like once before,
right?
With young Cloud saying Sephiroth, he's a big badass and soldier. I'm going to be just like him.
That's right. Yeah. And so again, to the point of like introducing a character, economy of storytelling, exposition. This is amazing because we haven't even seen this guy, Sephiroth, yet.
Yeah.
We just know that apparently he wields a giant katana and is constantly killing people.
It's like 6 foot long. I think that's one of the reasons why that Sephiroth is one of the best, if not the best, villains in video game history. Certainly the best in Final Fantasy. And it's one of the things that I think is a knock against Kefka, the runner-up that people often argue about, is because Sephiroth is barely in this game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Jaws, effectively. He's scary because you don't see him.
Yeah.
And you can tell the main difference between this and the remix. You see Sephiroth right, left, right, and center. It loses some of his punch.
At this point, you don't even know if maybe he's a good guy. Right? He just killed the bad guy.
Yeah,
the
he just
big
killed
bad.
the president.
He let
Nobody
you out
evil
of
could
jail.
kill the president
And when we do
in video games.
when we do learn about Sephiroth's backstory, which happens in just a moment after this, everybody manages to escape. There's this big motorcycle chase.
Yeah, you fight the Turks, and the motorcycle chase is like in its own separate engine.
Yeah, it's a minigame, basically.
It looks great. You're just swiping it at motorcyclists.
It's probably the most fun of the minigames, I would say.
Yeah,
I
it's much
agree.
better than the snowboarding one that comes
Absolutely.
after this. It's much better than
really?
fucking, was it Condor?
Fort Condor.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Awful.
So around 8 to 10 hours into this game, you've ridden your motorcycle off of the edge of the city, and you're outside, and the hatches are all shut behind you. You do not get to return, and now you are suddenly in a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
You're in a big 3-dimensional open world, and you can see little like huts and caves and everything on the horizon. And what happens in that first little town that you go to once you're out of Midgar is what we're going to talk about when we get back from this break.
Greetings, fellow citizens of Midgar. My name is Pizzino Bagliacci, inviting you to join me at the grand opening of my world-famous restaurant, Pizzino Bagliacci's Pizza Parlor. The best pizza you can have under the giant metal pizza that keeps us safe from the horrors of natural sunlight. Vitamin D, more like vitamin D's nuts, am I right? All our kids have rickets. Located in scenic Sector 7, we use only the freshest of ingredients, like those we harvest from the innards of the giant houses that periodically attack us. Man, what is the deal with those houses? There's just like 20 of them just sort of like rambling around out there. What are they looking for? Is it me? Is it Pizzino Pagliacci? What will they do if they find me? Is it sex? Is it a sex thing? Who cares? They make a good pie. We got all your favorite flavors of pizza pie. We got Buffalo Chocobo. We got hubcaps or whatever. We got, I don't know, what do you want? I think I saw some ghosts earlier. You want a ghost pie? Could be pretty beautiful. That's a little ghost joke. But seriously, don't eat ghosts. I think that's probably cannibalism. So come on down to Pizzino Pagliacci's Pizza Parlor so I can justify spending my life savings on this tiny little cot next to a brothel. Please? I really need this? I'm so bad at making pizza pies. It has made me so sad, got so bad, I had to go to the doctor, and I says to him, "Doctor, I'm so depressed. I want to make a great pizza, but I lack the basic knowledge of its ingredients." And the doctor says to me, "Well, there's a famous pizza maker come to town, Pagliacci. You should go see him." And I says to the doctor, "But doctor, do you have his address?" And then I found him and moited him and took his stand. But it's one thing to assume another man's life. It's another to maintain it. People started coming up to me demanding pizzas, and I'm like, I punched a house and took its goo. You want some house goo? But nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted the house goo. I mean, what am I gonna do? It's not like the perfect pizza is just gonna drop out of the sky. That's good pizza pie.
The whole world has stretched out before us, kind of.
Wow.
In one of my least favorite world maps in an RPG.
It's pretty aggravating.
Honestly.
It's a really
There are
annoying map.
no great landmarks, and it's really swirly and swishy.
I do like that Midgar sits at the center of a crater where the earth around it has just been sucked dry. I love that detail.
I mean, I sucked dry?
Yeah.
Of all the Mako energy.
It sucks you off.
It's the
It
city
sucks you
that
off.
sucks you off.
But they do keep it simple. That usually you're just sort of in a bunch of different little gated areas with 2 places. And so you head pretty much to the nearest place, which is called Calm.
Calm with a K. What we learn here basically is a little bit more about Cloud's backstory. We see all of this in flashback, which at this point is a pretty well-established device.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, 5 years ago, Cloud went back to his hometown of Nibelheim. And again, we'll remember that's also where Tifa is from.
Yep. She's wearing a nice, jaunty hat when we see her
That's how
this
you can
time.
tell that
Little
she's
cowboy
young.
hat.
Little cowboy hat.
Yeah.
It is cute. And they go down to the reactor, the Mako reactor that is right by Nibelheim there.
Cloud is fully in Soldier. He's with Sephiroth.
That's right.
You get a couple fights where you're fighting alongside Sephiroth, and he's just the ultimate badass. He just one-shots
And this
everybody.
is the most amount
great.
of time that Sephiroth is in this game and one unbroken.
Yeah.
Not counting how long the final boss fight might last.
A very cool thing that the game does to give you a sense of Sephiroth's power level is that there's a couple encounters where you get the opportunity to control Cloud, who is useless.
Yeah, you can't
And
do
then
shit.
Yeah.
And then Sephiroth, like you said, just one-shots
I think he does
everybody.
9,999 damage no matter what he does,
Yeah.
which
It's
is the max
you can do.
damage. Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out that you're also there with just like other soldiers.
Yeah.
Who probably won't be important
Soldiers
later.
who aren't in soldiers should be pointed out. Those are two different
Yeah.
things for some
Yeah.
reason.
Like grunts.
And they don't even get to show their faces. They wear masks and hoods.
Yeah, one guy's like, I really don't want to be here, actually. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
that's
which
cute.
is which is historically accurate. If you get a group of soldiers together, all they'll do is constantly bitch about how they don't want to be there.
When they get down to the reactor, it becomes clear that Sephiroth is looking for something specific.
Yeah. On the way into town, he said his mother was named Genova. And it's like, well, we've seen that name before.
Mhm.
And
Right.
now in the reactor, it's almost like you're inside of a heart with like these
Yeah.
ventricles and arteries and
If
stuff.
you pay it, if you catch it, there's like a little hint that this isn't a normal Mako reactor, which also it's fucking me up that we all know it's pronounced Mako now, and we're all just ignoring it, which I respect.
I'm still saying Mako. but
Yeah,
that's
Brian's
okay.
saying Mako, Brian's
I'm saying
saying
Mako.
Aerith. Brian is the best boy.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
well done.
Thank you.
But
I've
this
been
is-
a best boy. I've been a key grip. I've been a featured extra. I'm handy around the movie set.
but it's pointed out that Hojo said this is like a different kind of Mako reactor, like for experimentation purposes, and it's under R&D instead of the fucking Ministry of Sucking Dry or whatever the fuck it's called.
So there's all of these pods inside, and then at the very top of the staircase is like this door that says Genova over it.
I gotta wonder why. Like, is this supposed to be a big secret, right? Like, and it's such not a secret. A little girl from the local town could lead you to its front gate.
We then get an interaction between Cloud and Sephiroth that really lets us know what Sephiroth is up to, as well as a little bit of the backstory of how Sephiroth came to be.
This is Genova, right? The lock won't open.
Sephiroth goes down the stairs and Cloud follows.
This is the reason for the malfunction. This part is broken. Why did it break?
He pulls himself up to look in the window of one of the pods.
Now I see. Hojo. But even doing this will never put you on the same level as Professor Gast. This is a system that condenses and freezes the Mako energy. That is, when it's working correctly. Now, what does Mako energy become when it's further condensed?
Oh yeah. It becomes materia.
Right. Normally. But Hojo put something else in there. Take a look. Look through the window.
Cloud pulls himself up to look. Upon seeing the monster inside, he falls back.
But what is this?
Normal members of Soldier are humans that have been showered with Mako. You're different from the others, but still human. But what are they? They've been exposed to a high degree of Mako, far more than you.
Is this some kind of monster?
Exactly. And it's Hojo of Shinra that produced these monsters. Mutated living organisms produced by Mako energy. That's what these monsters really are.
Normal members of Soldier? You mean you're different?
Sephiroth clutches his head as though in pain.
Hey, Sephiroth.
No. No. Was I?
He starts slashing at the pods with a Masamune, and Cloud leaps back.
Was I created this way too? Am I the same as all these monsters?
Sephiroth.
You saw it. All of them were humans.
Human? No way.
I've always felt since I was small that I was different from the others. Special in some way. But not like this.
He twists to look as one of the monsters suddenly bursts out of its pod and lies moaning. The scene fades.
Am I human? I didn't quite understand what Sephiroth was saying at the time. I was even more surprised by the fact that Shinra was producing monsters.
My God.
Yeah, the monster thing is always funny. A lot of these like 90s, maybe 80s JRPGs, there always has to be a reason why the world is full of monsters.
Right.
And so
Right.
here it's because the Mako reactors and Hojo's experiments have been creating basically all of the random encounters that you've been dealing with in this game.
And they don't really deal with that idea
No.
too far beyond introducing.
It's just a convention.
Which is kind of unfortunate.
Sephiroth's brain damage.
Yeah.
Because like if you kept running with it, there could be a lot of really cool ideas, but it just, doesn't really.
Yeah, here's the pod where they make hell houses. It's very Pentecostal.
It's a very big
again-
pod.
It's a huge pod.
Wait, do they come out fully formed, or does that house have to grow up?
No. It's a shack first, and then it becomes a cottage.
Yeah,
and then
They're
it becomes
actually
a house. Yeah.
marsupials. They live inside of a larger hell house.
It's
Smaller pouch.
It's a baby house.
A hell house begins its life as a love shack.
There are a lot of ideas in here that then get expanded upon in spin-off after spin-off after spin-off because, again, the game is mostly just throwing new ideas at you for 40 hours.
and they don't really expand upon them too much. And sometimes one is just like a really cool idea and then immediately dropped.
And then you forget about it because there is so much game that you get through after that point.
Because honestly, until we were talking about right now, I never really did think about the fact like, oh yeah, they did just drop a fucking bomb on you saying that Shinra is responsible for literally everything bad in the world.
Yeah.
And then they just never bring it up again. Maybe we lose it somewhere around the same time that Cloud arms himself with a bat with a nail through it.
Yeah.
Things get weird.
At the end of the day, like most of this is just convention to drive the plot forward. It's all just about like the world, I think. Like that's what sticks with you about this game is moments like that, moments like the very next thing that happens where, you know, the party finally manages to grab a chocobo, which are like these, I don't know, large ostrich/chicken-like creatures.
Yeah, but what do you use them for, Josh?
Well, you use them to run around on the surface.
Horse chickens.
I'm sorry, Joe, what did you say?
Chicken horses.
Oh, what's that sound in the distance?
Come on, man.
Chocobo Corner.
Oh yeah.
Hey, bird horse. You're looking real fine with
Come
all
on.
that plumage.
No.
What is that? Blue?
Probably.
Oh, yeah, you got just what I need. I'm gonna breed you.
Are you?
Oh, no.
With this green chocobo.
No.
Okay.
But only after you both have won 9 consecutive chocobo races each. Because, oh yeah, I'm going for that gold.
Okay.
A gold chocobo, that is. And it is a long and arduous process. Ooh,
Yeah.
take my nut.
Come on.
My carob nut.
No.
My carob nut, which is the aphrodisiac that makes your bird pussy get all sloopy sloppy.
It's a cloaca.
And also, it makes it more likely to produce a black chocobo, which will be very important if you ever want to breed that gold chocobo, which will require an additional capturing of a wonderful chocobo, the ones that
Please
always
stop.
appear with the
Stop
monsters
it.
called jumping,
Please.
but not with the ones that are called
Please.
Bandersnatch. Those
Okay.
those are not the right chocobo.
No,
if you
they're
use
very
those Bandersnatch
frumious.
chocobo,
They're
it's
frumious.
not gonna work. You're gonna have to start over pretty much from square
Okay.
one. Ooh.
A square.
You lost me at bird pussy.
But it will all be worth it. So that you can finally visit like 4 places on the map
Yeah.
that have materia that are kind of cool, I guess, and will definitely be worth the 6 hours you put into watching these
That's
bird
on
horses.
you,
fuck.
AJ. Do not fucking blame the game for
Look,
that.
it's not Final Fantasy VII's fault they produced the world's most fuckable bird horses, and you just lost yourself down a wormhole shaped like a weird bird cloaca pussy.
But Joe, you know what they say? Birds of a feather fuck together, am I right?
That's right.
So open up that
Is that what they
beak,
say?
because you're going to choke on my till I bow. This has been AJ's Chocobo Corner. AJ's Chocobo Corner.
You can't trot out a term like bird pussy and not expect someone like me to engage, all right? That was tailor-made to draw me in as if I was a carob nut. Also, I fucking hate chocobo breeding more in this game and every other game that has it, to the point I have never done it.
Yeah, the chocobo thing is so weirdly integrated because you run into this farm that does some of this stuff, but it's kind of way too expensive. And you mostly use it to just catch one so you can get past this valley where there's a big snake that one-shots you. Yeah. And the world is so segmented out that you don't really get back there for a long time unless you're a real pervert and you just like walking backwards through everything. Then they become useful for a very specific thing 40 hours later.
I use them precisely one time, and that is to cross the swamp. And then I never use them again because even my weird ass can't get too involved in bird horse fucking.
And that was one of the moments that I was going to talk about that's pretty memorable here, right? That you've got these huge fucking serpents that I guess are in the swamp.
And only the swamp, which is not that large. It's as big as the serpent.
But you can't outrun the serpent unless you are on a chocobo. And then the moment that you get to the other side of the swamp, you see one of these huge fucking serpents that Sephiroth has just impaled.
Yeah. He's fucked this thing up beyond any kind of It's another thing where it's like
put Sephiroth in the story is just to show the damage he's doing without seeing him, because he's just kind of a weird emo samurai who is not at all scary on his own.
Yeah.
No.
Like we saw who he was in the past. He spent a lot of time reading. He burned a house. He burned a village down.
Yeah. Killed Nibelheim.
Yeah. He destroyed the whole town.
He genocided Cloud's entire hometown.
Yeah.
In response to finding out what was going on inside of that reactor.
Don't worry, he's going to call the Young Turks and they're going to clean that right up.
And so everyone thinks that he's been dead for a number of years, and here he is, resurfaced, killing everyone, and you haven't seen him yet. So he's going to be really fucking crazy once you finally run into him in the present day.
Yeah. He could look like anything by the time you actually see him. You know, the aura is established, and that's something that this game does better than anything before and certainly anything after, is this wake of destruction, and he's not there.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to point up that around here is the first time where you can confront the character of Yuffie. We're not really going to be talking about her until a bit later on, but I just wanted to plant a flag there.
Yeah, because you can get her early, you can get her late, you can not get her at all. She's an optional party member.
Right. And eventually this brings us through to Junon, which is a heavily militarized port city.
It is just a gun.
It's a what if a town
that is a gun.
That's right. And as is the case with, this is a recurring theme, you know, we see this in a lot of different places. There is also a village that's down at the base that is just being exploited basically for the natural resource because there is an abundant supply of Mako energy nearby.
And Junon is a Mako cannon.
But yeah, we get some fun world building here. You know, there's like this parade mini game. There's these little shops.
You want to call the parade mini game fun?
No, it's
you can
not
do
fun.
that, but
It sucked.
The game is not
reenacting
fun.
drill and ceremony from when I was in the army, but worse because it's in a PS1.
Oh God! Oh no!
How accurate was it, Joe?
I mean, it was accurate, and then I fucking hated it.
It's one of those things where it's like a better idea in theory than execution, but it is pretty funny that there's a mini game where you have to march alongside a drill on live television, and they comment as you are doing
And
it.
if you do it poorly, the ratings get worse.
Like the other ones, you can completely fail it, which I did.
Which I think is actually kind of the ideal way to do it, because if you fail, they send you a grenade.
They just nail it
They're
to
like,
you.
kill yourself.
Which is, again, accurate as what your supervisors would tell you in the actual army.
Yes. This is also where the ghosts of the tutorial guys show up is in this area.
I mean, this doesn't feel as alive as Midgar, certainly,
Not
but it
even
does.
close.
I think it does feel still. I don't know, like the fact that there's like little cats and dogs running around on the
It's
street,
kinda
just
fun.
little things like that. It's fun.
You get a dolphin friend.
that's right.
Yeah.
You do.
Friend. I think
Less
that
said about the dolphin, the better, but
I think Junon is different from Midgar because it is supposed to be that weird vibe of like you're in a military base, which is also just a canon that we live in.
Right.
Like it is a weird fucking place. Everywhere you walk, you're reminded that you're going through these alleyways that are, again, part of a weapon.
Right.
And I think the vibe of it is very, very cool. But again, it doesn't feel alive and thriving because how could it?
You live inside of a gun. And I think, you know, this is another one of those examples of what you were talking about, AJ, where this is a really fucking cool idea. And if they'd had I don't know, 6 or 7 years to flesh it out.
Yeah.
Like a certain video game called Final Fantasy VII Part 1, whatever the fuck.
Rebirth. This
Thank
one's
you.
in Rebirth Part 2.
Yeah.
There's other things to play with, but instead we just kind of get a gesture at a cool idea. Our heroes board a Shinra cargo ship.
They're all in disguises, including Red 13.
Including Red 13.
And he's in like a sailor outfit, but it's like...
It's my dog on his hind legs. It's windy outside. I do really like the idea, though, that you get up, check your email from Sakaguchi, and he looks at it, he's just like, what if Gun was town?
Yeah. God.
Then you build the whole town, and he's like, what the fuck is this? Who told you to make this? You did, you drunk freak!
And then you get the first of the Sephiroth boss battle.
Which isn't necessarily Sephiroth. You run into Sephiroth, and then he leaves behind Genova's arm.
I am the arm.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's this big, like, slurpy thing that you have to kill.
Yeah,
He's
pretty
a
much.
goo
How
man.
about I just take this arm, I just leave it behind. Fuck you. It's just really weird, slippery guy.
He's so slippery.
Back in the flashback, we had seen that Genova herself was at the core of the reactor.
Right.
And Sephiroth took her body, like took her whole
torso,
body,
yeah.
and including like the head as like its own separate piece with him. And of course,
Yeah,
we've seen the torso in the lab, but we haven't seen that head.
He considers Genova his mother. He's got some really like hardcore mommy issues going on.
Yeah.
We don't get any explanations of how he found all these seemingly disposable chunks of Genova to throw at us.
Or even like how he's getting away from you is a little bit nebulous at this point.
It's established that he can fly. There's no explanation as to why he could fly, but he could certainly just kind of zip away.
He can zip away, but it paints this picture of like that there's more going on with Sephiroth than just this guy wandering around, right? That he has other mechanisms of enacting his vengeance than just,
Well, and to the point of vengeance, after a brief stopover in the beach town of Costa del Sol,
Very pretty.
Our heroes trek up Mount Corel, where there's another Mako reactor. They march up the train tracks, which is really more like a roller coaster track, if we're being honest. And this actually takes the party to the bombed out shanty town of North Corel, and everyone is extremely unhappy to see Barrett, because it turns out he came up in that town. He advocated on behalf of Shinra to build a reactor there because they were like, hey, we can help revitalize the local economy.
Yeah, Cole's on the way out, Mako's on the way in.
That's right. And then Avalanche, the eco-terrorist group, ended up attacking the reactor, and Shinra, in retaliation, burned the entire fucking town to the ground.
Which sounds like something Shinra would do, is they would kind of be, Reinhard Heydrich about it. Something I missed, maybe I did miss it, maybe it doesn't fully explain it, is I was always kind of under the impression that Barrett, during my playthroughs, that Barrett was like one of the founders of Avalanche because he is the most gung-ho of anybody in it.
Yeah.
Right.
But instead they already existed. Who started it?
Well, maybe it's more of like a sort of decentralized thing.
Yeah,
where you
like
have
an
a group
Earth
of people who call
Liberation
themselves
Front type thing.
Avalanche, another group of people who call themselves Avalanche.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably
I
a good swing
I can
of it.
certainly see how this could be a radicalizing event that would cause Barrett to join Avalanche, though, to be like,
absolutely.
Well, you burn down my town, I fucking destroy your reactor. Like, I think this is effective storytelling. A slightly less effective piece of storytelling, in my opinion, is the story of his friend Dine.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that, Dine opposed the plan, and Barrett, when he was fleeing the burning town alongside, he tried to catch him as he went over a cliff, but he couldn't quite hold on.
And so Shinra just like opened fire on their hands.
Only their hands.
Exclusively?
Yeah, it's very operatic. Like, our hands were destroyed by guns, therefore our hands will become guns.
So Barrett ends up having to fight Dine, and then afterward they have a dramatic conversation, shall we say.
Yeah, there's this whole thing that happens where a bunch of guards are dead and they're like, this can only have been done by a gun that was also a hand. That's you, Barrett. And Barrett's like, no, there is literally one other guy.
Right.
And I'm going to find him.
So that is all of the information that we get about Dine, essentially. And this is the payoff for that. This conversation. Again, bearing in mind, we know quite a bit about Barrett and pretty much nothing about Dine.
He starts to get back up.
Back
He limps away to lean against a wall.
It wasn't just my arm. Back then, I lost something irreplaceable. I don't know where I went wrong.
Dine, I don't know either, man. Is this the only way we can resolve this?
I told you. I want to destroy everything. Everything, this crazy world, even me.
And what about Marlene? What's gonna happen to her?
Think about it, Barrett. How old was Marlene back then? Even if I did go to her now, she wouldn't even know me. And what's more, Barrett, these hands are a little too stained to carry Marlene anymore. Wow. Marlene's already 4. Barrett, don't ever make Marlene cry.
Dine? Dine!
Dine lets himself fall backwards over the edge as Barrett runs towards him.
Dine! Dine! Me and you are the same. My hands ain't any cleaner. I shouldn't be able to carry Marlene either.
I don't care about any of this.
No, I do. That's why I wanted to include it, because I think it's one of those examples of writing that to me just fundamentally does not work.
Not even a little bit, no.
But has the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
But fails. And I'm interested in why that is.
This is a section of the game where all of a sudden it's just like you go to a new town and you get a new set of flashbacks for each party member.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know if I guess you have to make a game of a certain length with a certain amount of stuff in it. But to me, most of this doesn't really work. And especially with Barrett, who I just think is very poorly written throughout.
Yeah.
I think Barrett has a really interesting idea behind him. And and then like I see what the dialogue is that they've given him. And I'm like, well, okay, great.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm in the same boat where they wrote Barrett so badly that when all of a sudden I'm supposed to take him seriously as like the leader of let's call it an episode of this part, it's like, that's not his place. You've written him this whole time, specifically voiced and acted to be a sidekick. And then you are speed running, making me try to care about him in the span of, what is this arc, 30 minutes?
Yeah, I guess what's funny is that I have just taken a lot of the stuff from the remake and rebirth, which I think had more of an impact on me than playing the original Final Fantasy VII. Like, because it just has deeper characters, and it fleshes out characters that are kind of sketches in this one. And so I took a lot of that understanding of Barrett into this game. But this scene works for me, I guess, because I kind of view Barrett as the protagonist of this game, because he wants something so clearly from the word go, and he fights for it the entire game.
Yeah, the problem is everything else that happens, though. Like, I agree with you. This is part of why Barrett is so frustrating, is because he should be a great character.
Yes.
He's a father. He has something to care about. He's leading this very successful eco-terrorist outfit. Like, they've managed to bomb a huge reactor in a big cyberpunk dystopia, and he's written like a fucking moron. And he's written using, like, they're trying to write him black in the American localization. And
because to be clear about this, I don't know if we explicitly said this, Barrett is black.
Yes.
Like the model is, he's a Mr. T looking
and
type.
they try to write in a certain way where he uses more contractions, but they also use like weird contractions and weird slang and just give him more swear words as opposed to like a way of talking that actually feels natural.
It's exactly like, what if a Japanese man in the 90s attempted to write Mr. T?
And apparently this isn't even the case in the Japanese text. Like, this is something that has been expounded on in the American localization of him specifically.
So they localized it without any kind of oversight? Or, I mean...
There was oversight, but it was very poor oversight and very poor communication.
Yeah, and it was done very, very quickly. The game was made in a year. He maybe had like a month to do this.
That's wild.
Look, man, when you're on a time crunch, you don't try to invent Mr. T out of thin air.
Yeah, it's also that thing that like there's so much that's thrown into this specific scene it's so much information. The fact that Marlene is not Barrett's biological child, but adopted child from Dine. It's a lot to throw at a character that we don't really know a lot about. But what I think works about it for me is that Barrett could very easily become Dine. He says, you and I are one and the same. And because he has this interaction, he doesn't.
Barrett always has a purpose and lives by it.
But that's kind of the thing, it's framed like, you know, if you my hands are too stained. He's killed too many people, right? Easy to figure that out. But Barrett has killed like a fuckload of people, and he's going to continue killing a fuckload of people. He never stops killing people through the entire run with his gun arm.
Everybody kills people. The bartender kills people. The big dog kills people. The toy Moogle kills
the
people.
Giant sentient stuffed animal kills people. Like everybody in this group is a fucking spree killer, unlike the world has ever seen. But
this is not a tonal issue that occurs with, I think, for instance, Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
I think that Chrono Trigger is very clear about what it is, what its characters are doing, and what they want out of the world. Whereas I think that although there is the gesture toward you would want this, it's not paid off because, there just wasn't enough time to really pad it out in the way that was necessary.
You can't fill the gap there when it comes to me. You can't get me to care about dying enough in the limited amount of time.
Right.
And it's not that they can't use this medium to deliver hard-hitting storytelling, which of course they do at the end of this disc.
Yeah,
and even with things like Kate Sith coming up, but it's just the fact that they try like this is Dine, care about him a lot so we can kill him, and it makes an impact and you care about Barrett. Like, bro, it's been 10 minutes.
And that Chrono Trigger comparison is good, Josh, because that one also has like an episode for a party member. It's like, here's where Robo finds some stuff out.
Yeah.
And it's Barrett has enough going on right now. We can find out he's from this town. People don't like, we don't need to be like, yes, it was only 3 years ago. And then we get everything always goes back to the past. And it's like, well, we could give Barrett a plot line right now that's about his daughter, who we have not seen since the slums were crushed.
Show me something now, and also give me the ability as the player to control it.
Or even like without using Dine, he's going back to the town that he's from, that Shinra annihilated, and he's already having these thoughts about my hands being too stained to touch my daughter, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, now you're back in the town that started it all. You've killed all these people. You've been involved in the deaths of possibly tens of thousands of people. Has anything changed? Or are you right back in the smoldering fucking pit where you started? Like, there's a lot of things that could be used this. Instead, they have to try to put a loss into it, which also doesn't work when Barrett, again, never brings it up again.
Yeah, and Dine is gone and he stays gone.
Yeah, you can't have it both ways. You can't introduce this man who is hypothetically his brother into this mix to kill him off, and then Barrett never bring it up again. It's one of the problems you have with writing loss into a narrative.
Well, I wanted to draw a point of comparison between this story and the storyline of another character, Kate Sith, who we have briefly been mentioning, because once we leave Coral, we actually go up to a massive theme park / casino in the sky that's called the Gold Saucer. And you end up meeting a character known as Kate Sith. Now, Kate Sith is a small black cat riding a huge fucking Moogle, which is
a toy Moogle.
I fucking hate this character so much.
Well, I've got a little bit of Kate Sith here as well, so we might as well introduce him.
Hey, you! What are you looking so down for? What about it? Want me to read your fortune? A bright future, a happy future, but don't hold it against me if it's not a great prediction. Oh, so sorry. I'm a fortune-telling machine. My name's Kate Sith.
You can only read the future.
You kidding? I can find missing things, missing people, anything.
Can you tell me where a man named Sephiroth is?
Sephiroth, right? Okay, here goes.
He shakes about on his Moogle and then hands Cloud a fortune.
Give in to the goodwill of others and something big will happen after summer. Wait, what is this?
Huh? Let me try again.
Be careful of forgetfulness. Your lucky color is blue? Forget it.
Wait, give me another chance. Wait, let me try it again.
What you pursue will be yours, but you'll lose something dear.
Kate Sith is this cat riding a toy Moogle that is not actually that at all, but a guy in a vat at Shinra headquarters who is piloting him to spy on you.
Yeah, right.
Which he does successfully, and he steals your shit.
Yeah, and the whole time it's like you find out he's a spy, right? And he's like, well, You can't really do anything about it because I know all your plans and whatnot. And if you don't let me stay with your party, something bad will happen.
Yeah, he's allegedly holding Barrett's daughter hostage.
Yeah. And so now you just have this stuffed animal spy just following you around. And again, nobody ever brings it up again.
It's so frustrating.
So, like, why even have that as part of the story?
You needed to get this key to get to the Temple of the Ancients. And the Ancients are also known as the Cetra. They're these space people that Aerith is descended from.
She is the last one.
Which is also why Hojo wanted Red to fuck her, since apparently that would have a baby. I don't think Hojo's a very good scientist.
No, he's quite bad at his job, actually.
And everyone is just like, yeah, you betrayed us. We don't like you. And he's like, well, you'll just have to deal with it.
Or else I'll kill Marlene.
And so you just do. And it's like, come on, I would just kill this guy.
Just beat him to death
for
with
sure.
a bat.
Immediately.
Like, you all have so many weapons.
Because it also doesn't matter. He's a robot.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't matter.
That's right.
because
He's
he
not
does
real.
die, and another one does come back.
Yeah.
Is he any fun to play as?
No.
No, it's all random chance. So he only gets 2 limit breaks, and both of them are chance-based.
Well, that's fucking stupid.
His weapon is a fucking megaphone.
Yeah.
That goes.
And he, because he's like Master Blaster, so he uses his megaphone to command the toy Moogle on like attacking. The other weird thing is you have a maximum of 3 people in your party. This is like Chrono Trigger. 3 people in your party. You always have Cloud in there, except for specific story moments where Cloud is like gone or whatever. And you just don't get the chance to really experiment, because why would you? Unless you just want to walk around the world map and do 1,000 random battles with everybody. You're going to get a new party member and they're just going to go in the box.
Yeah, and Kate Sith belongs in the box. And
Yeah,
that box
put him
needs
in
to
the
be
fucking
lit on
box.
fire.
But Kate Sith is, in a sense, integral to the plot.
But he doesn't even need to be. You could just cut him out and nothing would change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, once we get to the Temple of the Ancients, you're going to have to make a sacrifice. That's the big thing, is like somebody is going to have to die. And the whole time it's like, it's going to be Kate Sith.
It's yeah.
Come on,
It's like the Arrested Development joke from that one episode of like, one of these people will die.
It's that old
And
lady.
It's just the old lady.
And even Kate Sith is like, yeah, I'll die. It's fine. This
Yeah,
isn't
it's
like-
great, actually.
And this isn't even my real body. So it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, that only brings up more questions. Like,
What are we
why am I using potions on you?
There's a moving piano under. He's like, I'm doing this all for you. And I'm like, it doesn't
You're going to come back in 15 seconds. And he does.
He literally pops out. It's like, hey, I'm another Kate Sith. How you doing?
Where were you hiding?
And everyone just goes, oh.
What a mess.
I really was hoping we were rid of that one.
So we have to go meet some more guys.
Yeah.
And one of the places where we meet some guys is a place called, let me check this, make sure I got this right. Gonzaga University?
Yes.
Is that right?
Gongaga.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
Gongaga.
only notable for basketball.
Yeah.
Right.
So this place is where an old Mako reactor was, and it has exploded.
Killing the basketball team.
This seems to be a pretty common issue in this world. I'm starting to think that every Mako reactor was built by the 1980s Soviet Union.
Well, yeah, no, I'm starting to think that Mako energy might be an analog for another type of energy, maybe.
And a certain anxiety around that type of energy in a certain country that has a lot of it.
Yeah.
Politics in my video games? No!
I just wanted ethics.
Damn it.
And here we run into another evil blonde Shinra lady, because there's the one lady in the Turks, but then there's also this lady named Scarlet, and she wants to use the materia from that reactor to make some kind of ultimate weapon, and then she disappears. The only other thing that happens in this town is you run into an old couple, and they're like, oh, you look like you're from Soldier. We had a son in Soldier. His name is Zach. Did you know him? And then Aerith and Tifa, if they're both in your party, they both walk out of the house, and you go talk to them. And Tifa's like, don't worry about it. I'm feeling better. And Aerith is like, yeah, I used to date Zach.
From Gongaga, it's on to Cosmo Canyon. We sort of get in the same way that we have the big dramatic thing with Barrett. We get a big dramatic scene here for Red 13. His real name is Nanaki. His grandpa is named Bugenhagen.
Yeah.
He's a materia
He was
expert who knows a
adopted
thing
by
or two.
Germans, the worst
That's right.
possible fate. Bugenhagen can fly.
That's right.
He has no legs.
Yeah, he
He's
just
just a
floats.
floating torso.
He's a
like,
floating guy.
Like the dad from the Oblongs.
Yes.
And nobody remarks on this.
And we learn that Red 13's real name is Nanaki, and he's got this whole thing with his dad who he's ashamed of. And it turns out that after you go through the most annoying cave in the the entire game.
Second most, I'm
Definitely
gonna
not
say,
the most
yeah.
annoying.
It turns out that his dad was actually
His dad
a hero.
was a hero, and just everyone decided not to tell him that
right.
because they all knew.
Yeah, they wanted to keep it from your dad is way cooler than you'll ever be.
So whatever, we get Nanaki's Rad Dad redemption, and we continue on to Nibelheim, which was not burned down.
And everyone seems real chill about everything.
This is very Tiny Tim who did not die, and also the ghost of Christmas Future is here, and there's like 15 of him. There's a bunch of guys in weird black robes who are all squirming on the ground like little earthworms.
That's how I dance, all right? Don't hate on them.
And a bunch of them have tattoos that all go up to the number 13. Black-robed figures. Number 13. I wonder if this would show up in another story by Squaresoft and or Enix later.
No, can't think of anything.
Again, just to point it up, there is a guy named Vincent in the basement of the house here.
In
who
the
you can
Shinra
get.
Mansion,
He is definitely not a vampire. Just
and
pointing that out.
He is incredibly annoying to get. As one of my favorite characters when I was a child, because of course,
He's so
my
cool.
favorite character now is still Red. You have to solve a puzzle to get a combination for a safe, and then fight an absolutely pain in the fucking ass boss, which at this point in the story you probably cannot beat.
Yeah, they kind of want you to get Vincent, to get your ass beat and then try to get Vincent maybe later when you come back.
Or you can just turn on invincibility and get Vincent immediately.
If you're playing this game normally and you fight this boss as soon as you get to it, you're going to get your ass stomped in, or you've been grinding a comical amount.
You know, other annoying encounters include the Materia Keeper. I know,
Fucking
Joe, you
texted
texted me to be like, have you been to the Materia Keeper yet? He's the fucking worst. And I hadn't.
I keep the Materia.
And then I got to him and I was like, Joe, you're goddamn right.
Every time I replay this game, this is, I mean, in RPGs and JRPGs, for people who don't play these games, there's always something called the skill check.
Yeah.
And Materia Keeper is a hard fucking check.
Grinding is called grinding for a reason. It's because you don't want to fucking do it.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Cloud has acquired more shit, including materia, various weapons.
Summons,
and you end up in Rocket Town, which is so named for the big rocket that's in it.
The rocket predated the town. There was no town before. And then when the rocket crashed, they're like, well, we're here anyway. And this one has you know, most Final Fantasy games have a Biggs and a Wedge as a reference to Star Wars and a reference to every other Final Fantasy game because they're always in it.
Sure.
And so every Final Fantasy also has a Cid. And the Cid in this game is a fucking monster.
He's a dickhead.
He sucks.
He's abusive. He's a drinker.
He hates his wife.
He has this plane helicopter thing that's really cool called the Bronco. And then you fuck it up so bad you can only use it as a boat, which is really weird and really creative, and I like it.
It's fun,
I love that.
Really clever.
It's the escalator of planes.
Previously, you had gotten a buggy that's like, this is how you cross rivers. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Here's a plane. This is how you cross rivers.
Yeah.
But it's a fun little subversion of player expectations, because the moment you see the plane, you're like, oh shit, I'm going to get a plane. I'm going to be able to fly over the whole map. Nope.
Nope. You
You'll
just
get
get a
it until a
shitty
lot
boat.
later.
Get back to cocking the buggy. We're going over the
And
rivers.
then you go back to the Golden Saucer. This is when you get the key. This is when Kate Sith betrays you. The only
Everybody
reason
betray
to
me.
bring up this return is that you get to go on a date.
Yeah.
And the game sort of monitors how you talk to characters throughout to determine who this date is going to be with. Who did we all date?
Eris.
Okay. AJ?
My first time I got Tifa, and then this time I got Eris.
Okay. Yeah, I got
But
Eris.
I specifically followed a guide to get Tifa because I love Tifa.
The
But
default for everyone, if you just follow the gaming beats, is almost always Eris. But of course, there's always the secret option, Barrett.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
You get
is
to go on a
possible
man date.
Yep, it's possible to go on a date with Barrett. It is hard to do. If I remember correctly, you just go on the Ferris wheel with him.
So, in the first part of the date, you go to see a show, and then you get called up on stage with your date.
It's
and you
really
can be
funny.
The hero. And I just thought it was really interesting, the names.
Yeah, I love that everything is, I guess, improvised. Like, you get to go up on stage, and the way that I guess this play works is that you can just say whatever you want, and they'll just go ahead with it.
yeah, it's an audience insert improv.
Yes. I love to take my date to the local improv show, so I never have a second date.
So, as Cloud, you perform as Alfred, the hero. And you can seek aid from either the king or the wizard the wizard named Vorman. You got Alfred and you got Vorman. All we needed was like a biddy, and then we'd have the whole podcast.
We'd have the whole podcast. You know what? You got to name Eris Biddy.
Yeah.
And then you got one.
And you can like rescue the princess, Eris or Tifa, with a kiss. And you can choose either to kiss her or to kiss like the guy who kidnapped her instead and just daze him with it.
It's very clever. It's very fun. This is obviously a callback to the opera scene in Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we got to have some sort of play like callback in this one. And it's very rewarding and very, very funny. And then obviously Kate Sith betrays you at the end of this. I named him the Ferg.
It sounds like a disease.
That's what I think. That's what I think of Kate Sith.
Kate Sith is a communicable disease.
Yeah. And I don't think the vat thing ever pays off, right? You never find the vat that Kate Sith is in, right?
No, it's a secret vat full of warm goo.
Yeah. Maybe it's in one of the phone games that they made.
We mentioned the Temple of the Ancients.
Yep.
There's a MacGuffin that they have to go after
The
called
black
the Black
Materia.
The Black Materia is in the Temple of the Ancients, and then it turns out that the Black Materia is the Temple of the Ancients.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I like that. I like the whole idea that like you can only claim it by dying, and then Kate Sith is just this awful little cop out for that.
Right.
I do like that idea, but we've already been explained to how materia is formed. So this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point.
So once we have grabbed the black materia, Cloud gets puppeteered suddenly by Sephiroth. He would you kindly's him, and Cloud hands it over and then starts beating Aerith to death.
I forgot about that part. Because when I'm playing this normally on my yearly replay, I'm not really paying attention to anything. It's just kind of mindless click. So I'm really paying attention to the story beats this time around for the first time in honestly years. And I absolutely forgot that this part happens.
If I recall correctly, this is one of the parts where you are in control. You are pushing the D-pad to make these actions occur.
Yeah,
right?
you're beating the shit out of Eris.
Yeah,
Just
basically,
crazy.
if you press like the movement buttons, you'll kind of squirm and go nowhere. If you push any other button, nothing happens. And if you push A, only the worst thing happens. This is not a game that's making a commentary on player agency in games, which is where you see this stuff more commonly in the 2000s, 2010s.
Yes.
Here, it's just the way that the story is going to be told. It's your character being puppeteered. What would that feel like? It would feel like this. All you can do is press A and keep going.
But that's the interesting part is they have you do it rather than it be a cutscene that you can't control. That's the interesting part.
And so, you end up like passing out. Some time passes. Once you wake up, Aerith is gone. She appears to you in this dream in this forest that's up north, and you may have already gone there. I had.
Yeah, me too.
She's popping between the trees like that Magritte painting. And she's like, I'll be up here. And so you've got to go pursue her.
And that is another one of those really striking moments. There are just moments here and there where the storytelling, the visual storytelling is so cool and is doing things that I have still never seen a game do. This is one of those moments where not only are you seeing this sort of surreal, dreamlike moment, it's also providing for you as a player a sort of ludic clue for what you ought to do next.
Yeah. And in these moments, I'm so, I talked about how much I didn't love the world of this game, the world map. But like in these moments where it becomes a little bit more nebulous about where to go, it's not just the place in front of you. If you go back to towns, their dialogue will be different in the way of pointing you to the next place, to the Temple of the Ancients, to Bone Town up north.
Yeah, this is a marked improvement over Chrono Trigger, I will say.
What I think is really lovely about these sequences, like these dream sequences, is that they really utilize how creepy these avatars look when they're kind of lifeless, when they are treated like dolls.
Yeah.
And so you go up north.
Yeah.
You go after Aerith. You find yourself
Bone Town.
after doing a really horrible mini game of finding the key to the forest.
There's many horrible mini games.
Fucking insane.
But like, it's one horrible mini game of many. I actually wasn't really bothered. You're talking about the archaeology mini game, right?
It drove me nuts. I
up.
eventually had to look it up.
Okay. I had an okay time with that. There were so many just awful mini games, especially at the Golden Saucer.
On the scale of bad mini games, I will say it does not rank that highly.
Yeah.
But because we have so many of them and they only come up like once and you do them for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to rank on top of that.
But all of this takes us then through the sleeping forest into the Forgotten Capital. This is a massive, sprawling it feels completely different from anything that you've encountered up until this point.
Yeah.
It feels completely alien.
Seashells.
Yeah, like it makes the ancients seem like like we're dealing with some kind of Final Fantasy ancient alien shit.
Turns out there are aliens in this game. It's just not the Cetra.
Everything in this ancient capital centers around a building that you're not even sure what it is. They've built something that's so like beguiling and odd. On the way to, you pick up some nice weapons, including a nice shiny new weapon for Aerith, and you get all this text around that you can't read, but you know she can. And so once she joins your party again, she'll be able to read it.
Yeah,
right, because your party splits up frequently throughout this game.
And I, if at this point, it's like, okay, you've either achieved or are probably getting close to Aerith's final limit break.
Yeah.
She is becoming a formidable mage or healer, depending on how you choose to use her.
Probably almost always a healer. I know that's what I did.
And her weapons also hit hard at this point too.
They do.
She can attack normally as well.
And I think it's one of those things where I certainly played the first disc of this game just with the girls throughout. Like whenever I could,
too.
that was my party.
I always had Cloud, Red, and Eris. Was always my party. I always used Eris because she's the best healer. Her limit break is healing.
It's insane, yeah.
And I did the boys run this time. I did Cloud, I did Barrett, and I did Red 13, and it's broken, frankly. You don't need healing because everyone is dead immediately.
So the gang, gets into a place in the Forgotten City where they're able to take a nap. And on waking up, they find that they can suddenly travel even deeper into the very belly of the city. There's this thing that looks kind of like a museum, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of Riven. There's a lot of sort of Riven feeling stuff here, partly because it's so nautical, I guess.
There's like what appears to be a statue of like a fish inside of some anemones. You walk down into it, and now it's just even bigger and even more just wild and out there.
It's like you're in a palace inside of a snow globe or a terrarium. It's like surrounded by this shattered glass something encasement way under the earth. It existed so long ago, you have no idea what the purpose of it is or what anyone did with this place.
Right.
And you see Aerith in the middle praying, and you don't know what she's doing, but she's in tune with something in the life stream, which is what Mako also is. Sort of, it's all life on the planet that creates the sort of structure that keeps the planet together, literally. And you go with your party, you separate from your party, whoever you have with you. For me, it was Tifa and Barrett at this point. And you hop up these stones to get to her. And then once again, you hit the would you kindly moment. And you try to move away and you can't. And Cloud raises his sword. And oh my God, it's actually going to happen this time. And then your friends call out to you and you break.
Right.
And you're okay.
Right up until Sephiroth fucking plunges down from out of fucking nowhere in a fully animated cutscene and stabs Aerith through the stomach. And she just fucking dies immediately. This is probably the most infamous twist in video game history. The way it seems is that okay, there's going to be these two options for Cloud to romance.
Yeah.
And each of them probably has their own trajectory. And you've probably already been putting points and other special abilities into Aerith. You maybe even have gotten all the way to her limit break. And it's like, I cannot wait to see what happens with this character. And she's fucking dead.
Gone. Yeah. And they drive it home. Right, because Cloud gives her sort of a burial at sea and she falls into the water far away. They're like, you can't use a Phoenix down on her. She is gone.
Everybody always says, why don't they use a Phoenix down? Well, Phoenix down, if you notice, is you're unconscious. You're not dead when you use a Phoenix down. Aerith is fucking dead. And one of the reasons why I think it hits in such a way is when it comes to video games, this had not been done before.
Yeah.
At least not in a mainstream, overwhelmingly popular game. You do not have a playable member of your party get gutted and die like they're immortal, because death doesn't really exist in these games.
No,
in Dragon Quest, your party members don't die; they fucking pass out, and you resurrect them. And Final Fantasy VI, which is arguably up until 7, the most emotionally impactful JRPG ever made, main characters still don't die.
Yeah.
And if they do, they're brought back.
Yeah, in 4, they play a lot with this, and there are characters who die permanently, but it's after they've died 2 or 3 times before that, and then came back inexplicably, like in Candide.
And I think to really drive it home further, you get this interaction here between Cloud and Sephiroth that really puts an exclamation point on it.
Eris, this can't be real.
Do not worry. Soon the girl will become part of the planet's energy. All that's left is to go north. The promised land waits for me now over the snowy fields. There, I will become a new being by uniting with this planet. As will this girl.
Shut up. The cycle of nature and your stupid plan don't mean a thing. Eris is gone. Eris will no longer talk, no longer laugh, cry, or get angry. What about us? What are we supposed to do? What about my pain? My fingers are tingling, my mouth is dry, my eyes are burning.
What are you saying? Are you trying to tell me that you have feelings too?
Of course. What do you think I am?
Stop acting as if you were sad. There is no need to act as though you're angry either. Because, Cloud, you are a puppet.
I do like Cloud is just verbally explaining that he's crying.
Yeah, he's never felt it before.
Yeah.
I think that's what the intention is, and that's why Sephiroth is also like kind of beguiled that he has feelings, because Sephiroth clearly doesn't. Yeah. And also because we know the truth he knows the truth about Cloud.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that also in terms of the writing, this is the first time that the game tips its hand that Cloud's backstory is completely different from what we have thought it was up until this point.
And it's still also ambiguous in a way, because the way Sephiroth kind of talks, like, of course, now the joke is people, you're talking like Sephiroth.
Yeah, Sephiroth posting.
Is that like, he's always like bombastic and plotting and evil. So he could just be calling him
Shakespearean.
Yeah. He could just be calling him a puppet as like a burn. Because because Sephiroth can clearly control him, but we also don't know why that is the case. So when I'm playing this the first time, I just think it's because, like, God damn, Sephiroth is so fucking powerful, he can just control Cloud. Like, that must be what it is.
Sephiroth is giving his Sephiroth speech, and Cloud's speech bubble appears on top of his box.
Yeah,
they're both happening at the same time, and then that last, like, you are a puppet, happens in the white text without a box, like it's the voice inside Cloud's head. It's really dynamic, and it's punching. It's when the game is on its main story, it's always at its best.
And I do think this is something that this game did, because I've played a lot of I guess they're called classic PS1 era, even PS2 era JRPGs. They're still like one of my favorite era of game. I still play them quite frequently. I didn't see any game play with how the text is presented like 7 has. And nobody even tried to copy it afterwards, which is kind of interesting.
Well, because so much of it comes down to this question around this time of, like, what even is a game anyway?
Yeah.
And you know, the other like classic on the PlayStation, Metal Gear Solid, would take a lot of this and sprint with it, you know?
Just 1 year later.
Yes.
Which was
wild.
probably the development time of Metal Gear Solid. The creators have always said that Final Fantasy VII was a game about life. That was their main theme. Yeah. And they were like, if we were really going to show how important life was, we had to like show how fragile it is and how death can come for you at any time. So we had to kill Eris.
Right.
And it stands strong as one of the, like, I don't know, strongest artistic choices I've seen in a video game in a very long time, because they stick to their fucking guns.
I think one of the reasons why it hit the way it did is the same reason that, and this is probably an unpopular comparison, why like people glommed onto Game of Thrones as a medium, and that is like that idea that like nobody is safe.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. Of course, Game of Thrones is not the first piece of media to do that either, but
24 did it too much.
It's something that became a central focus and a piece of something to pull you in. Is like no matter who you like, anybody's free game. And of course it isn't true in Final Fantasy VII. Only Aerith dies. Really, Kate Sith doesn't really die.
Right.
Not really.
But
you
like
get a new one, unfortunately.
once Aerith dies and you realize you're only like halfway through this game, there's 3 discs and you just finished the first one.
You don't know who else is on the chopping block.
Yeah,
because they killed fucking
anything could
Aerith.
happen after this.
Yeah, they killed fucking Aerith. Like,
we're only halfway through the game and we've been recording for like over 3 hours. Joe, do you think you just want to come back maybe next week?
Oh, maybe.
You got time.
Yeah, are you free?
Yeah, I think I can clear up some time.
All right, cool. All right, same time next week. All right, cool. That's a plan. Joe, before we wrap up here is, well, first of all, we're so glad we could finally make this happen.
Yeah.
This has been a ton of fun.
This has been great.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about, plug, whatever?
I am the host of the Lions Led by Donkeys podcast. We talk about disasters in military history and other history throughout time. And you can listen to us wherever it is you consume podcasts, wherever pods are casted. You guys were just on our show, and we got to talk about a Marine getting speared through the dick and balls. That's right. Getting a Medal of Honor.
Yes, indeed.
Pantsless Marines in the Korean mud. And also...
Barney getting his heart ripped out.
Like a month or two ago, also, we went on for, I know, a Patreon episode of yours. Where we talked about the film Pearl Harbor, which we've also, of course, talked about on this podcast. So I think
we'll talk about again. I don't know.
Fucking hope not.
We'll achieve surprise.
Next year, same time, same movie, same fuck parachute.
I would recommend, anybody who likes our show, I think if you go check out Lions Led by Donkeys, you'll have a good time. Also, if you're coming over from Lions Led by Donkeys to our show, welcome. We're happy to have you here.
Yeah.
We also have a Patreon. It is patreon.com/worstofall. We do premium episodes every other week. They're just like this one, except that you have to pay for them. It's $5 per month. Next week, Joe's going to be back on, and that's going to be...
And we're going to finish up Final Fantasy VII.
We're going to finish it up. We're going to be putting that bad boy on the Patreon. So we hope to see you again when we talk about it next week. The only other thing that I wanted to point up, I'm directing a play.
Yes.
It is going to be going up very soon. The play is called My Brother Jake. It is going up right here in New York City at The Tank, which is located on West 36th Street. The performances are going to be on Wednesday, February 12 at 7 o'clock p.m., Saturday, February 15 at 7 o'clock p.m., and Sunday, February 16 at 3 o'clock p.m. If you can make it out, I would love to see you there. I think I'm probably going to be at all 3 shows. Come by, say hi, support. It's a really fantastic play about 2 brothers. And if you want to get tickets, you can do so by going to www.thetanknyc.org. And we'll also throw a link in the show notes so that you can easily just go right to the page and get your tickets there. So I think the thing I wanted to close on here, and the thing that will take us through the rest of this game, is that Cloud, after this, he has the opportunity to talk to his entire party, and he delivers this monologue that I think is actually pretty nice. So, Joe, I'm going to have you read this, and that'll take us home. Until next week, I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians. Insert disc 2.
And then go ahead and
Everyone,
read the thing.
Listen to me. I'm Cloud, ex-soldier, born in Nibelheim. I came to settle up with Sephiroth. I came here by my own free will, or so I thought. However, to tell the truth, I'm afraid of myself. There's a part of me that I don't understand. That part that made me give the black materia to Sephiroth. If you hadn't stopped me, Eris might have been. There's something inside of me. A person who's not really me. That's why I should quit this journey before I do something terrible. But I'm going. He destroyed my home 5 years ago. He killed Eris.
And now he's trying to destroy the planet. I'll never forgive Sephiroth. I must go on. I have a favor to ask of you. Will you come with me to save me from doing something terrible? I don't know how Eris tried to save the world, and I guess now we'll never know. But we still have a chance. We must still get that black materia back before Sephiroth uses it. Let's go!